a title race. It might not actually be the case as the season rages on, but it's looking pretty likely. And if Spurs get something out of this game, not even a win tonight, you suspect that the longer this month goes on and into January, they will be able to mount a title challenge. And I know Jose's been out over the last couple of days and saying Alexander-Arnold's not injured, Matip, I believe he's going to play, Fabinho's not injured. He's basically been completely writing off the Liverpool injury crisis. That has all the hallmarks of Jose Mourinho, who's trying to stick the knife in a little bit into the moaning Jurgen Klopp, and he's been doing a lot of that over the last couple of months about the injuries that have fallen upon Liverpool, some in a very unfortunate way, some as a result of playing your best players in a dead rubber game in the Champions League.
No. They were all caused by BT Sport. It was Des Kelly's fault. Oh, and you missed that bit. It was completely...
I don't have the channel,
on the shoulders of Des Kelly.
Yeah, don't have the channel. So missed all those injuries and missed Des Kelly going two-footed in on Diogo Jota's knee. So Jose, basically, I think this week has started to try and stir that pot a little bit. And you don't want to overstate what's happening here, because it's not like Jose and Jurgen Klopp have this big beef that goes back years or anything like that. It's always seemed that it's actually been largely respectful. I think a lot of managers show a lot of respect towards Jurgen Klopp because they all think he's absolutely class and he is a phenomenal manager. But I think Jose is starting to smell blood a little bit in this year's title race.
Yeah.
And when Jose does that, we start to see the snarling, sniping Jose Mourinho rather than the moody, angry, sour one that we saw at Manchester United. And there is a difference. And as I say, I think when we looked at Manchester United, we thought to ourselves that this is a manager who is nosediving in terms of his career. He'll take Spurs and maybe have one good season where they get to a Champions League, qualify for the Champions League once again, and then maybe finish sixth the following season. But now it looks like that they might actually be able to challenge for the title. So got us looking back into the relationship between Jose and Liverpool. Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Jose and Liverpool, for example?
Is it the slip?
It's a slip, absolutely. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind for most people, is this unbelievable celebration from Jose Mourinho after Demba Ba scores the goal after Steven Gerrard slips. And I don't think many people need reminding that Chelsea weren't exactly in that title race. They weren't there for the taking. Like, this was not a massive 3 points for them to actually go on and win the league. This was Liverpool versus Manchester City. This was not Chelsea in the fight, but it looked as if it wasn't a fight. And Jose Mourinho went wild that day. He almost went as wild as he did that night when Porto beat Manchester United in the Champions League. Those were two similar celebrations, and it is interesting looking at that because the first of those instances against Manchester United that night for Porto almost cost, or probably did cost, Jose Mourinho the Liverpool job. Like, this is one of the sliding doors moments in European football and world football that perhaps goes underappreciated a little bit. The fact that Jose Mourinho could have become Liverpool manager after he was Porto manager. There's many pieces done. I think there's a piece on the London Independent today about this, but it's been written about it at length over the last few years as well, about the overtures that were made on Jose Mourinho's team's part to try and get him to become the successor to Gerard Houllier at Liverpool. And his agent at the time essentially gets in touch with Liverpool and says, let's organise a meeting with Gerard Houllier about potential transfers.
Yeah, sorry, that was the key bit there, exactly. He'd already been in contact. He was a snake in the grass, essentially. It was like, oh, Gerard, I got some players you might want. And then he slides in door number 2 and goes, Rick Parry, you know that guy's like dead man walking. I mean, my guy is Jose Mourinho, and you want a bit of hot Jose action.
Jorge Baidek is Jose Mourinho's old agent. Ever heard of him?
No.
No, neither have I. He's the guy who is making all these moves on behalf of Jose Mourinho, saying you should sign this player, you should sign that player. By the way, my client, Jose, who's the hotshot young kid in European football, he is ready to take your club to the next level. I see you haven't won a Premier League title yet. You are being usurped in every area by Manchester United. We can take you back to the top. And Liverpool seemed pretty keen at the time, until Jose Mourinho knocks Manchester United out of the Champions League and he goes flying up the sideline, celebrates with a phenomenal, passion-filled burst of energy, and Liverpool say, that doesn't fit into our tradition. That just does not fit into our club.
Yeah.
Actually,
puke.
Do you know who does?
That's puke-inducing. That was the wrong call by Rick Parry, by the way. But go on.
Well, without question. And they decide at that moment that Rafa Benitez is the man for the job. Now, it is, as you say there, more than likely the wrong decision. It's very hard to make a case that going for Jose at that point wouldn't have been the best move for every single football club in the world. At the same time, you look at the comparative figures that were spent in and around that time. Jose Mourinho gets a £100 million cheque handed to him by Roman Abramovich. Rafa Benitez spends around £19 million in his first summer. Again, at that time, nothing small, but still, as it will turn out, not enough to win your Premier League title, not enough to challenge for a Premier League title when Jose Mourinho has that backing. I don't think he would have got that backing at Liverpool. Whoever went into Chelsea at that point probably would have given their stocks a good old boost towards the stratosphere at that point. It just so happened that Jose also was really, really good and is an excellent manager and was an excellent manager. So I think the sliding doors moment there is a little bit overplayed. It would have just been very interesting to see how Liverpool would have gone if they had abandoned their tradition and said, you know what, we're going to tick the box that says, yes, we subscribe to managers running down the touchline. Because Jurgen Klopp, of course, would never do such a thing.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, Jurgen Klopp is a younger German version of somebody who brings all that stuff, who doesn't quite have the rough edges so far, who doesn't have the cleverness, the glick side of, you know, what's the grinta that is part of that strain of football where you cheat, basically, in any possible way. You turn your teams into divers and moaners and whiners, and they're constantly at the referee. Klopp doesn't have that in his armoury, which is a good thing. Like, I mean, look, Jurgen Klopp has been the best thing that's happened to the Premier League in about a decade. It's been absolutely, it has enervated everything to the point where you have to watch when he's on screen. However, it's been constant hagiography from everybody since he has arrived, because he's done a great job, so why wouldn't it be? And he brought a challenge to Manchester City when it felt like there was, you know, it felt like Manchester City were going to turn the Premier League into the Leinster Championship. Same colour, same results, same financial advantages, whatever. But then Klopp managed to wrestle that back, and now it turns out Jose Mourinho has arrived to elbow his way in here with his brilliant team playing, very interesting football and some of the best counter-attacking football you're ever going to see, right? So it's worth watching. I think there's a very interesting dynamic here where if you think back to how Pep had to retire from Barcelona, essentially, which was the best job in world football and potentially the best job in world football history because they were playing the best football we'd ever seen and he had Messi at his peak. Mourinho managed to sour that to the point where, you know, Pep left that gig, stupidly, in retrospect, I think. And is he going to do the same here is he going to shorten Jurgen Klopp's stay in the Premier League by a period of time just by being like peak Guardiola? Peak Mourinho, in the middle of the press conference, he has counted the days that Jurgen Klopp has been the manager of Liverpool and compared and contrasted. So it's 1,800 and something days. Maybe I'm wrong by a day or two, forgive me. I have 300 and something days, 390 something days. But most of those days weren't real. They were quarantine days. I wasn't even working. So he's got 2,000. I have 300. Look where our teams are. All I can do is give praise to the players. The players, he says, not me, who has managed to transform his team into a team capable of going toe-to-toe with the best team in Europe at the moment. Let's not forget, Liverpool are the best team in Europe. So this is a masterpiece from Mourinho. And Jurgen Klopp's type of guy is going to respond to this.
I thought that this element of Jose Mourinho was gone. I didn't think that him as the manager who could take a plucky underdog or a pony, as he's calling it, and actually overachieving. I just thought that the press conference element of Jose Mourinho, where he was properly be excellent at the psychological warfare, I thought that part of him was maybe gone. He'd just become a moody old man. But I think he's starting to refine that over the last few weeks. The one key point in the whole story that we neglected to mention here was that this Baidek guy, Jorge Baidek, who was Jose Mourinho's former agent, this costs him his job at this point, and hence Jorge Mendes is Jose Mourinho's agent at this point and becomes the universe's best agent as a result. So there is your career arc there that came as a result of that. But it is interesting how Jose is, refusing to bow at the altar of Jurgen Klopp at the moment, despite the fact that clearly deep down he really likes the guy and really respects him as a manager. This is just, this is all part of the game. This is not nothing personal, Jurgen. This is just how I play the game. And it is a little bit interesting that he kind of talks about, the injury list that Liverpool are supposedly suffering and questioning that when Spurs are pretty fortunate in the position that they're in with their fitness at the moment. Like if they get one injury despite their squad depth, you would suspect that they're going to be in a bit of trouble.
0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us this morning. We'll come back to football with Gary Breen in just a minute. We're going to bring in the sports pages at 8:05. Then two semi-finalists in this year's All-Ireland Football Championship, Michael Quinlivan and Padraig Faulkner, are going to join us to give us their assessment of their respective semi-final opponents and what they think is going to happen between Dublin and Mayo on Saturday evening. John Duggan at 8:35, the Type 5 with Neil at 8:45, talking about the rugby transfer market and how Danny Cipriani's retirement / whatever at Gloucester yesterday may be a bit of chaos theory, butterfly effect. Is Ben Healy going to Glasgow? Let's wait and see. Deal or no deal, a special Christmas edition at 9:05, and then Jermaine Pennant's interview with Joe Malloy coming your way at 9:30 this morning. Now, Phil is with us. Phil, good morning to you.
How are you doing, lads?
What's going on?
Well, we'll start with what happened in the Premier League last night, and two results that were a bit of a surprise. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised that Wolves beat Chelsea, because Wolves have had a habit of doing this, and they reverted back to their three at the back. They were obviously trying out a four-man defence at times this season, but Wolves scored late on to give Chelsea a second defeat in the space of 3 days, finished 2-1 at Molineux. Chelsea did take the lead. Olivier Giroud scored early in the second half, but Pedro Neto scored that late winner for Wolves. Chelsea manager Frank Lampard said after the game maybe his players are starting to feel the effects of a busy schedule. Manchester City, this was a bigger surprise. They dropped points last night against West Brom, finished 1-1 at the Etihad Stadium, and Ilkay Gundogan had given City a first half lead, but they were pegged back. Really good performance as well from Republic of Ireland international Dara O'Shea in the heart of that West Brom defence. Despite that result, though, looks like Slaven Bilic is going to lose his job. Plenty of reports around this morning that he could be sacked as early as today, with the Baggies 19th in the Premier League. 6 games tonight, no doubt the pick of them. It's leaders Tottenham against second place Liverpool at Anfield. That one at 8 o'clock. As you mentioned there, Jose Mourinho starting with the mind games. It'll be interesting to see how that one pans out. The other 8 o'clock starts see Fulham host Brighton and West Ham face Crystal Palace. Before that at 6, Arsenal, who need a win. Their home form has been dismal. They are at home to a team in form, Southampton. Leeds entertain Newcastle. Leicester can actually go top for a few hours if they win at home to Everton. Trials of concussion substitutes in football could be confirmed today. The sports rule makers, the International Football Association Board, will hold its annual meeting. Obviously a very high-profile issue given what happened, Raúl Jiménez, the Wolves striker, against Arsenal in a recent game. There could also be updates on handball and offside laws, which seem to be grey areas every week with the use of VAR. There was more booing of players taking a knee at a football match last night. It was at League 2 Cambridge. Small number of fans were heard opposing the symbolic gesture, which is in support of the Black Lives Matter movement and to highlight racial injustice. But many supporters quickly drowned out the booing with applause. Cambridge won the game 2-1 against Colchester, who had a similar incident recently, as did Millwall. Tipperary saw off Waterford by 5-18 to 3-16 after extra time to book their place in the Munster Under-20 hurling final. Devon Ryan scored 2-10 for Tip, who'll face Cork in next week's provincial decider. Kerry also needed extra time to see off Cork by 21 points to 115 in the semi-final of the Munster Minor Football Championship. Limerick meet Clare tonight to decide who'll face Kerry next week. And the first night of the PDC World Darts Championship was last night. The defending champion Peter Wright safely into the next round. He beat Steve West 3-1. No luck though for Meath teenager Keane Barry. He lost 3-1 to Canada's Jeff Smith in the first round. The next Irish player in action is Limerick's Willie O'Connor. He's on in the afternoon session against Dutchman Neil Svaneveld.
And is anybody watching because there's no crowds?
Well, there was a crowd last night, but honestly, if you look at the way the tables were laid out, I saw somebody refer to it as similar to a Leaving Cert exam. It just looked like everyone was spaced out, so you couldn't cog. No sign of the invigilator, but no fans there today.
You know, about as much crack.
Do you know what love that is? Ger would absolutely love that. He's just anti-crack, anti-darts, anti any Christmas cheer, any happiness that comes as a result of a sporting event. You know, he would love that. So
get yourself... manufactured Barry Hearn crack can jump in the sea. I'm okay, thanks very much. Darts, whatever. That's your choice. You choose to sit down and spend time with Brexit. That's your choice. Happy Christmas, one and all. But I'm going to go and do something else.
The other guy is like, teacher, we didn't get any homework today. That's you.
7:46 this morning. Thanks very much for that, Phil. Let's move on and talk some football. Gary Breen, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads. I'm well, thanks.
Are you a darts fan?
Not really.
Yes.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the shows are great. They're great atmosphere, but I wouldn't be tuning in. My dad loves the darts and be mad trying to talk to me who beat who, but not so much me, no.
Well, let's talk football then. It's a very cruel world where Slaven Bilic finally seems to crack something and wakes up to the papers this morning he's getting sacked.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? It really is. I think they've obviously, looking at that situation, expect West Brom to be brushed aside comfortably by Manchester City. But they got that point that they probably felt they should have got against Tottenham before Manchester United. But to get that point is a real shock last night. It just shows you the problems that City are having. But take nothing away from West Brom. That was impressive.
Look, if you're the owner of the club, you get to make these calls, and that's your prerogative. But the list of candidates is like, we might go back to Big Sam or somebody like that, or Mark Hughes. And it's like really, you may as well. I don't know. I like the notion of sticking with the manager who got you up, and then, okay, maybe you do go down, but you give yourself a much better chance of staying up the next time you come up because that manager has acquired the information and the knowledge and has learned from it.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree with that in many aspects, Jer, but I think sometimes you can assess something and think, well, listen, that was the perfect manager to get us in the Premier League. Do we need one to keep us there? Now, someone like Sheffield United probably is in keeping with your argument there, Chris Wilder, who's having a terrible time, but I'd be amazed if they got rid of him. I think he's a problem solver. I think he will get it right. But with Bilic, they obviously have identified they're not convinced, and it'd be interesting to see how that plays out today.
It's almost like there's obviously not a one-size-fits-all approach to this, but there's kind of a similar theme around Scott Parker at Fulham and the way he's managed to steady that ship over the last few weeks. Like there were talks that Scott Parker probably wasn't the man for the job when they got promoted, which seemed ridiculous at the time, that they'd almost got promoted one season too early and that he would struggle, and he's learned very, very quickly, it seemed.
Yeah, but you're absolutely, Eoin. And I think at times you can assess, regardless of the results, whether or not the team or the club is on the cusp of something. Now, that probably lends itself to what Edu is saying at Arsenal, that everything is great, whereas we're seeing the results and thinking, well, no, I'm not quite sure about that. But as a player, certainly when you're something's about to start. And I think you're right with Scott Parker. A couple of those signings that come in, Loftus-Cheek, make a real difference. He changes the system a little bit. He's a problem solver, even as a relatively inexperienced manager. So that's impressive. That bodes well for his future. He's able to address in what is the toughest league and to get Fulham firing again. But you're right. I think a lot of Arsenal supporters have looked at what Edu has said and said, what are you talking about? Everything's right. How can it be in terms of the results, in terms of we're seeing fallout from players? But I think sometimes when you're there, you can assess what is happening. But I think results dictate whether or not that's going to last any length of time.
You've mentioned Arteta. We may as well talk about him now.
Yeah.
Where do you think we're going with this?
Well, I think it's such a difficult one, Jer, because obviously they finished the season so strongly. He's playing that back three, and it kind of tightens them up. It covers a lot of their sins. But he obviously wants to play a 4-2-3-1, and he's tried to do that recently, and it just doesn't work. And the reason for me, the glaring, the obvious reason is the two centre-halves are vulnerable, so you need two centre midfielders who can protect them. And Arsenal don't have that athleticism. They certainly don't have it in Xhaka, Ceballos. Partey obviously looked like, with that performance at Manchester United, that he could possibly do it, but he's had these injury problems. And that's where he's going to have to rethink it, Arteta, I think, because we're looking at a scenario now where initially he wanted to tighten out. We've said this before, that he's done that, but the offset is offensively they've been so poor. And you're looking at Aubameyang now where no goal in open play for so long. Lacazette doesn't look like he's going to get a goal. I'm not convinced that he can play that 10 role. So I think it's a challenging times for Arteta. And I think to make sure you can get through it, you need the players on side. And I think that Arsenal changing room is slowly starting to ask questions of their manager. Now, he might identify that there's a young generation coming through that can take Arsenal, but whether or not they're ready now remains to be seen. So I think as much as they do and the board are saying that Arteta is the man to take us forward, I think it could get a little bit worse before it does get better.
Do you think that the biggest issue that some of the players might have with Arteta might be his, I guess, acceptance of the behaviour on the pitch of someone like Granit Xhaka, while at the same time publicly condemning Nicola Pepe for his red card a few months ago, and Mesut Ozil getting frozen out, and the way that those players are probably communicating with one another away from the training ground, for example?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that as players, you want consistency. Certainly, you want your manager to you want there to be a hard line, and no one's allowed to go over it as such. But Xhaka just seems to really convince the managers of his ability in training, that he works hard all the time, but he just seems to let the team down so often. And he's been brought back in after obviously having that set to with the supporters, and then to do what he done in the last game against Burnley, it's just ridiculous. It really is. And then what it does is highlights then his performances and his contributions as a player, because Arteta talks about trying to get the team back scoring, but that service into them from the players like Xhaka, Ceballos, it just isn't good enough. And those two midfielders were given a nod ahead of the likes of Torreira, Guendouzi, because they have that footballing ability. But if you offset that against how vulnerable those two are out of possession, how poor they are in trying to make challenges, the lack of athleticism, then that's a real problem. And I think that's something he's going to need to address. Maitland-Niles performed well in that midfield with his athleticism in the Europa League against Vienna. So whether or not he gets the nod now, I think that would be a good call, because certainly Thomas Partey doesn't seem to be anywhere near coming back just yet. But I think it is a real concern for Arsenal now, because you think about how Arteta schooled at Barcelona, and then he's the understudy to Pep Guardiola. So everything about the build-up of those type of managers is about structure. It's about getting the opposition fatigued by moving them about, possession-based football. But then when you get into the final third, certainly Guardiola gives those star players the license then to express themselves there. Henry talked about it at Barcelona, how disciplined he had to be there, as opposed to how he was at Arsenal. But if we think about how Arsenal have played throughout the Premier League, and certainly with Wenger, it was about that ability to unlock defences, that kind of, not off the cuff, but that ability to just produce something. We're seeing none of that now, and that's a real concern.
They knew that he was inexperienced when they signed him to be the manager, so they must have understood that there would be growing pains. Did they just ride out the growing pains, and this is a 2-year project, and you say that now, and you say, look, I don't really care if there are factions in the dressing room, that's grand, they'll be gone either this transfer window or the next one, because Arteta is our guy?
Yeah, no, listen, I generally believe that he should be given more time. I don't think it's a case of get rid of him as such, because I do think it does take time, but I don't think Arsenal have that financial muscle to change it very quickly in terms of getting rid of these players. The frustrating thing, and certainly a stick to beat him with, is that his signings, the likes of William, just haven't produced. But Arsenal have had a history of players coming in. There's a young centre-half they brought, Saliba, for £30 million. He doesn't even make the squads, and they're looking to move him on. So you can't lay everything at Arteta's door, but it's going to be a slow one. I think he's going to have to integrate those younger players and give them their opportunities in the big games. But whether or not they're good enough to do that and to get Arsenal back where they believe they belong, that remains to be seen. Spurs
Liverpool is a conversation that we've been already having a little bit about this morning. It seems like Jose Mourinho is doing his very best to get under Jurgen Klopp's skin. Is it going to work?
Well, he's reactionary, isn't he, in terms of he's passionate. Jurgen Klopp, he's already said that Mourinho doesn't care about style. So that's one to kind of like, just to put him back in his place a little bit. But it's a fascinating game, it really is. And I expect there to be real fireworks, not just on the pitch, but maybe in the dugouts alongside them. I'm really looking forward to that game. In terms of how well Tottenham have started, defensively so strong, but then obviously with likes of Son and Kane up front, who can maybe take advantage of the injury problems that Liverpool do. And they do have injury problems. Mourinho may say he doesn't know of any injuries other than Van Dijk, but there are issues with Liverpool. There's no doubt about that. The very fact that Henderson and Fabinho, two centre midfielders by trade, finished the last game at centre half. So if they were to start that, I would fear for Liverpool. I really would. But what will be fascinating is that the tactics that Mourinho adopts in terms of that low block, defensively strong, allows the opposition to really get in and around their penalty box. If you do that to Liverpool, it's so vulnerable in terms of how good they are. Let's not forget, not just because Mourinho's there at Tottenham, and I know they're a very different Tottenham team, but Tottenham have only won twice in 28 games at Anfield, so it's not as if they go there and regularly feel comfortable. But I think that's going to be a fascinating game. I can't wait for that. What
do you do if you're in Liverpool's situation where you know exactly where the danger is coming from tonight, and yet if you are going to win this game, you actually need to do the thing that puts you in danger anyway, so that you need to go and attack, and you need to try and create chances, and you need to get bodies forward, but every time you do, you're vulnerable.
Yeah, well, listen, this is something we've seen with Liverpool in terms of that high defensive line, that we felt they have been vulnerable. But it doesn't change the way they play. Even look at the game against Fulham. Cavaliero's getting in so often with that high line, running in behind Fabinho. Matip not really getting their communication right. So I don't think that, well, I know, in my opinion, I don't for one moment feel that Klopp's going to change it. I think there'll be little adjustments as such, and making those players aware, as you just said, Jer. But I think he feels that he can press Tottenham. He can stop that service into Kane and Son. So the emphasis really is on those front three closing, and certainly those midfielders making sure they're blocking any passing channels. But I think it's difficult to stop Son and Kane, because they can go from deep in their own half to getting a striking goal so quickly. So it's a fascinating tactical battle, and it's two of the best Premier League managers. People may well say that Mourinho was a spent force, but he's proved his quality in terms of getting Tottenham back up there again this season.
This was the sort of game that Jurgen Klopp might have struggled with 2-3 seasons ago, where a team has a low block and Liverpool just can't figure a way around them, and maybe they get caught in the counter-attack. Are we not beyond this point now, where tactically a game like this is under real threat from Liverpool, or have we seen enough, I guess, chinks in the armour this season, Gary, to suggest that actually they are there for the taking tonight in this way?
Oh, yeah, listen, if you had to pick, I think if anyone was saying you want to go up against Liverpool and you wanted to pick a couple of players who are brilliant on the counter-attack, then it's Harry Kane, it's Son. We've seen it throughout the season. So they will be relishing going up against this Liverpool back four. Whether or not Matip is fit, we don't know just yet, but I think it's important that he is. But it might be a case of Jurgen Klopp just saying to his fullbacks, listen, make sure when you are looking to go forward, you do it when we've got really good possession of the football. And if we don't, just make sure you're 5 yards a little bit deeper so you can recover. You can engage Son if he does pull out wide, or if Harry Kane drops deep, can your midfielders collect him? So all those messages will be clear to those players. I mean, even without the instruction from your coach, from your manager, those Liverpool players are intelligent players. They know what Tottenham's strengths are. But I think Liverpool have evolved. I do believe that they don't change their defensive tack just because of the opposition. I feel that they think that they can stop the opposition making those passes. So it remains to be seen whether they can.
Do you have any concerns about Tottenham and how tight their games have been over the last few weeks? That it has been... They have just been really tight. The result has been in doubt going into the final 10 minutes in a lot of the games. They've obviously dropped a couple of points at the weekend. That we're talking about this team as if they're beating everybody at the moment, but they aren't. They are dropping points. Like, it is going to be the sort of season where 70-something points is going to win it, so it might be okay in the end. But like, there's not a sort of situation of diminishing returns coming here with Tottenham, is there?
But those points are certainly, I would look at it as any Tottenham fans must be so frustrated with the 2 points that they dropped at home to Newcastle. They battered them, concede late. They're 3-0 up against West Ham, Owen. You don't expect them to lose that, and they draw that game. So there's the points there. The game against Crystal Palace, that's 22 games in 13 weeks for Tottenham, only 13 for Palace. So you do expect Palace to come strong late on. So I think, obviously, Liverpool have had a heavy workload and schedule as well. I think they're growing. I think they're becoming more and more a Mourinho-like team in that that those drop points early in the season. I don't think we'll see that many of that happening later on. Obviously, fatigue will play a part, but it will for the whole of the league, for the whole of football. But I do feel that Mourinho's Tottenham team are not able to be expansive and take teams on that way. They're not going to be at the top of the league if they did that. But they found a way of playing with Højbjerg's been brilliant in midfield with Sissoko. And then obviously Ndombele gives you that physicality when he drops back to beef up that midfield, but that quality in terms of ball possession, travelling with it, and that skill showing why Tottenham plays so much money for him. But I think that back four, and I've said this to you guys before, when you look at it on paper, it doesn't seem that impressive individually, Tottenham's, in terms of Dyer at centre-half, but he's getting better and better. The two full-backs, great going forward. I'm not convinced defensively yet. As a collective, they have been so impressive, the best defensive record in the Premier League. But when you go to Anfield against Klopp's Liverpool team, that will be tested.
Who do you give the credit to for the step up from Eric Dyer this season? I know at the start of the year he was like, I want to play this position, and I'm sure a lot of it has come from him. But I guess Jose deserves a lot of credit for that too.
Well, listen, if you ask Mourinho, I'm sure he'll be saying it. He is the one that has rejuvenated Dyer at centre-back. When he initially came in to Tottenham, under Pochettino from Sporting Lisbon. I know he was young and he played at centre-half, and I felt, no, he's not capable of it. He doesn't have that mobility, doesn't see things early enough, and I liked him playing in that holding midfield role. But I think as the years have gone by, he's identified that he wants to play centre-half, and he's been so impressive. He's a leader, he's a communicator, and he's quicker than I thought, to be perfectly honest. But I think there's real challenges for him today. Those full-backs for Tottenham, if they get in those advanced areas and the quality that Liverpool have from those wide strikers attacking from out to in, will mean that he'll be squared up in positions he won't want to be against Salah, against Mane. So it's important that he does get those midfielders around him. And I think as a centre-half, he has real attributes, but I think his vulnerabilities are protected by the fact that Højbjerg sits in there, Sissoko sits in there and protects him so much.
Sounds like you're leaning towards a Liverpool win.
It's so difficult, Jer, because obviously I can see the strengths of Liverpool. You don't want them in and around your goal, and Tottenham do concede that ground. We know that they have the ability, Salah in tight moments, Mane. But you just look at Tottenham and you think about Mourinho and how they play, given the fact that their injury problems. I don't like sitting on the fence, but I can see this going either way.
Yeah, all right. Enjoy the game, whatever happens. Gary, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Some thoughts there from Gary Breen. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180. Is this, guys, it got the hallmarks of a stalemate 0-0 where they both decide, sure, look, this isn't where the league is going to be won or lost?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been this school of thought around a lot of teams. First of all, that Jose is Jose, and therefore he's happy enough to take these. That Pep Guardiola is actually happy enough with a performance like last night, that if they can grind out a win while playing slowly, then that'd be great because they're saving their energy or something for the second half of the season. I'm just not sure if Liverpool are ever going to be part of that. Maybe it will be streetwise for them to approach it in such a manner, but I don't think Klopp would ever do it like that. They do play each other again at the end of January in the Premier League again, and it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, exactly. 3 minutes past 8 this morning here. Pack show still to come. We've got a very special Christmas Deal or No Deal special coming your way, the Type 5 with Neil Treacy, and we're building up to the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship final on Saturday evening next.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB Sports Radio.
We've got a panel who know a thing or two about being trailblazers.
Paul Rouse, sport was already kind of impeded upon.
Sinead Kassan.
There's an innate interest in it anyway.
Dermot Lang, it didn't blow me away with him. Jason Sherlock and Kieran Donaghy with us.
Basketball would have been my main game.
Retro panel for you now.
This is OTB Sports Radio. The Retro Panel. Wednesdays and Thursdays from 4.
The big thing for me is the talk of splitting up Dublin, and look, I know it's only hearsay, people throwing it out there, but like for us as a family, for us to play with Dublin, it was about representing Dublin as a county, not representing the north or its outside or Navan Road or Dunks, whatever. We were representing Dublin first and foremost, and I think that's what a lot of our conversations with managers in the dressing rooms, certainly Pat Gilroy, Pillar before him, Jim Gavin certainly would speak about the standing on the shoulders of giants, the team of the 70s and stuff, and we'd have lots of visual cues up in the dressing room about the team of the 70s and kind of representing. So to take that, or to suggest that people would take that away from us, I think if there's a decision to be made about splitting Dublin, it's to be made in Dublin, not anywhere else outside of Dublin, or not in Croke Park. It's something that should come from Dublin. And like, how dare someone suggest that they split Dublin up and kind of take that identity and that history and that culture away from us. So
this Christmas, get all the non-stop Premier League action with a Now TV, Sky Sports or Sports Extra Pack. Watch over 40 games this December with the biggest names in the league. Gets it from Fernandes. Stream every game or only pay for the ones you want. Your sport on your terms with Now TV. 18 plus ROI only. Month passes sold separately and auto-renew. Minimum speed 2.5 megabits per second. Terms apply.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Right, a very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, you're very welcome along. It's 5 minutes past 8 here on OTB AM. You heard there in the ad break a clip from episode 5 of the Bernard Brogan podcast. Alan Brogan talking about why he disagrees with the talk of splitting Dublin. A very special final episode of Series 1 with the Brogan family will be available today on the OTB GAA stream. So just subscribe to OTB GAA wherever you get your podcasts. The best place these days, of course, is on the OTB Sports app. It's brought to you by Super Value, proud sponsors of the 2020 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship with the hashtag #SupportWhereYou'reFrom. Now, I'm delighted to say we have Cavan fullback Padraig Faulkner and tip forward Michael Quinlivan with us to help us preview the All-Ireland final. Gents, you're both very welcome this morning. Padraig, I might start with you. We're very interested in the dynamics of the Dublin forward line and just how they go about creating space. As somebody who's come up close and personal with them, what was that actually like? How did you manage that? And were there aspects of that which surprised you on the pitch, even having done all the video analysis, that actually there was something about these forwards that maybe you can't see in the analysis?
Yeah, it was a team like we have never played before. I suppose Dublin coming into the game, we did our lots of homework on them, and we did know the way they move, the way they make space, the way they move the ball up the pitch. But playing them was just a different story. Their forwards, although they're making space and different things like that when on their attacking approaches, they actually were tougher when we had the ball. They were ferociously tackling in full forward line, half forward line. They were getting a lot of joy out of turnovers on our 45, and a lot of scores, a lot of unforced errors and mistakes were costing us the game in the first half. So
you know that's coming and you prepare for it, and then when it happens you're like, oof, it's even better than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, really is. It's very hard to look up. I was saying to other people during the week there that they were asking sort of similar questions, and we did a lot of unforced errors, but it probably came from the back of pressure in other areas that led to unforced errors. So it mightn't have been a tackle at that moment. I know we kicked 2 over the sideline in that first half, but they probably came from being put in those situations. I know the goal as well came from 2 turnovers in a row. Ball came out. So, they got a lot of joy from the work rate that their forwards bring to their team. So it's the pressure you feel under, irrespective, by putting you under pressure straight away, you feel under pressure all the time, even when you might have a little bit more time. Yeah, it's I suppose it's like in rugby when the forward goes to make the tackle. He probably missed the first tackle, but he's put under that much pressure that the second man is the man that actually makes the tackle. Yeah, and it's given certain pictures to players to make them feel like they're a little bit haunted or a little bit claustrophobic. Yeah, okay. In terms of the performance against Mayo then, when Tip were on the field, Michael, was there stuff that you kind of, again, like that, you knew that they were going to do but couldn't stop them doing anyway?
Yeah, kind of like a similar thing, to be honest. We had a hell of a lot of unforced errors in that first half, but it's because we were under such significant pressure from them, certainly around the middle of the field and definitely from their inside forward line, who were working the whole way back to, our 65 and a lot of the time their own 65, putting in ferocious tackles, ferocious work rate. And we knew it was coming. We knew that would be probably the step up that they would try to bring. And we talked about it, but it just looked, on the day we just didn't really deal with it well, and it probably cost us, especially in that second quarter, I would say.
The thing about Mayo that seems to have been so impressive is, as you say, Michael, that full court press that they implement and how good those forwards have been without the ball. You've played them a couple of times at this point. Have they gone to a whole other level in that department this season?
Yeah, I suppose we've that's our third time playing them now in 5 years. I'd say it's certainly probably the most intensity they brought to a game, to put pressure on our backs. Like, look, on top of the work rate that they have, you're also talking about some brilliant forwards. So you're worried for our backs, like you're worried about, marking your man, being as tight as you can. And when we turn the ball over, then they're putting you under further pressure again. Like it's a very tough station for those guys. And we just didn't really move the ball like we wanted to in that first half. But yeah, I did feel that certainly they were ferocious around the middle of the field, and when they did turn it over, they had so many runners coming from their half back line, from their midfield, and it caused us a lot of problems going the other way.
You did, however, manage to put a serious dent into the scoreline, and there will have been serious worries, I'd imagine, on the Mayo front in terms of the damage you did to them in the second half, especially in that semi-final. What was that down to, do you think, that upturn in your fortunes up front, at least in the second half?
It's probably twofold. Like, look, I'd say it can be hard, you know, being Mayo in that situation, because you're pretty much at a hiding to nothing. Like, you know, if you continue to do what you're doing, everyone just kind of says, "Oh, sure, that was the game." So maybe they dropped their intensity by 5 or 10%, and it probably afforded us a little bit more space to do what we do, or do what we did in that half. But we were a lot better. We moved the ball a lot better. We tried to be a bit more direct, tried to properly have a go, because, you know, we really had nothing to lose from that point on. It was just a pity that we couldn't have done that in the first half and seen where it would have taken us in that second half.
Do you find that on your own kick out that the Mayo players are pushed so far up that you've got an unbelievable amount of space in front of you, and the same with Connor as well? Like, I wasn't at the game, and a lot of people have only watched it on television as well. Can you just paint a picture of how much space there actually exists between your forwards and your backs when Mayo are doing that full court press? I wouldn't say that they're overly kamikaze about it. I think they back their forwards as well, that if they do, you know, if we got off a short kick out, that they would be able to put us under pressure, man on man up there. They're not really committing extra men into our back line to try and really condense the space. I'd say more so because they're confident in what their forwards can bring and how much space they can cut off. But obviously, we got some joy going long, but we've you know, we had some very big lads out around the middle who were able to win their own ball, and it's probably the easiest way to get the ball up the field is long catch and then move it as quickly as you can into the inside forward line, and, you know, hopefully get them chasing back towards their own goal. But it certainly wasn't an Australian team against the Ireland situation from a few years back, where, you know, they nearly committed all 14 or 15 men up into the opposition half. It was more controlled, I think, more measured, and it was like, look, every time the first half probably stopped us going short because they were getting such joy off our turnovers then. Padraig, could I just go back to something you said there a moment ago, just about the ferocious intensity that Dublin bring? Is that on a whole other level to the intensity that you experienced against Donegal, for example, who would have been considered as proper All-Ireland contenders or proper heirs to the crown that Dublin might have left behind this season?
Yeah, I suppose we done the exact same to Donegal. We got a lot of turnover in there in the top half, and we put the pressure on that Dublin put on to us. I know Dublin have a serious class, so do Donegal, but Dublin it's like that's a little step up from intermediate to senior. Dublin just bring it with so much more intensity, and when it's done to you in a venue that has so much more space like Croke Park, it was a really tough situation to be in.
Is that a big factor actually then, going from, well, of course it's a big factor going from the athletic grounds to Croke Park, but it's clearly a massive step again, considering the team you're coming up against are so used to the confines of the space that they're playing in?
Yeah, look at it. It's a small advantage, but you're not gonna say it's match winning for a team. Like, at the end of the day, it's just another pitch. But it is a benefit. It's like playing a wee bit at home for them. But look, I'm not going to hold that against them in that. They're just playing their normal game, and unfortunately, they've more outings on it than we had.
Would you do anything differently now, having had that game under your belt? If you to play them again this week, if that game was refixed for whatever reason, what would you do differently?
In terms of venue, in terms of game?
Well, you brought up the venue. That's interesting. Would you have tried to get it moved in retrospect? Was that the thing to do, or was that a sideshow?
No. I think what would happen was there'd be a couple of weeks of deliberation, and then it'd end up that the game was still in Croke Park. So, no, I don't think we would have done anything differently to try and get the game somewhere else. And
just in terms of your how you actually play the game on the field then, like, do you do something different on Cluxton's kickouts now that you've experienced that and now you've seen the intensity? Yeah,
Cluxton was getting a lot out short. He was kind of backing his cornerbacks who were kind of sitting on either side of the semicircle. Now, it's a dangerous enough kick out because you can't go back to the keeper. Probably would have pushed another man forward and make him go long more. We had such big men around the middle third in our half forwards, our half backs and our midfield. And we were dominant teams this year at the middle of the field. So if I was doing it again, yeah, I would have made him try and go as long as possible. Probably would have pushed 4 men into the full forward line to stop him getting that little kick out. Even though it is a dangerous kick out, he backs his corner backs and his whoever pulls into that space so much, because his back is to the play and the first thing he's going to meet is a player. But they have full trust in themselves that he's going to win it and he's just going to turn him, and it's an attack on. Every time it was Cluxton's kick out, that we think just led to another attack. This was a slow build-up, it was a slow play, but they just treated it like a brand new attack every time.
It's interesting that you say that, because it's almost as if it's an experience that you need to get the hang of to survive against Dublin. And what we had this weekend is a team who, at least over the course of the last decade, seem to have built up a knack of how to at least get within touching distance of Dublin. Do you believe, Padraig, that Mayo have the exact tools and the exact experience to be the one team who might push them this year?
Look, Mayo have the experience of playing them so many times. Every game hasn't, like, there's been years that people said they were going to whitewash Mayo, and it just hasn't happened. Mayo are a team that are really physically strong and really, really put it up to them. Now, in different games that Mayo have played, if they give Dublin, like just in our own experience, if they give Dublin any inkling of just weakness, that Dublin will take advantage of that. I know in the Tipperary game, when Mayo did let Tipperary in, Tip probably could have, Michael yourself, could have been in for 2 or 3 goals in the first half. That probably would have changed the game, and I just think Dublin would punish that. And like when we were playing them, they were 5 points out of sight. It was always a cushion that we were chasing. They got that good start, and it was just really, really tough. We were just chasing the game, and then when they did get on top, they knew we were going to go for goals. So they just absolutely pulled everyone into the middle, and every high ball that we were getting joy on in our previous games, they weren't even competing for it. So their game management was, they just wanted the ball to break and bodies there. So their game management now is very, very good. They cynical fouled us as we tried to build momentum. If we got a score, they slowed the game down. So it's just something Mayo is going to really, really have to. They're going to really, really have to do their homework on them and know how to play the game.
That must be incredibly frustrating, where you know exactly what the opposition is doing, and you're falling victim to it as it happens. You can see it, and you can't interrupt the pattern.
Yeah. And it was funny, someone said to me during the week that it was like playing a game of whack-a-moles. You curb the influence of 1 or 2, and another 2 or 3 pop up and start playing. So it's very tough to manage a game like that.
Yeah, the biggest whack-a-mole is obviously Brian Fenton. Michael, talk to us a little bit about where Fenton stands at the moment and his evolution as a footballer, because every year we think, he can't get any better. That's it now, he's peaked. And actually, all of a sudden it's like, well, there's still a little bit to go, it turns out. He can always find another couple of percent.
Yeah, he keeps finding, new things that, bring him to the next level. Like you see the movement, I know he kicked the point against Cavan where he'd moved into the full forward line and comes around and kicks one on the loop, and you're just like, that's a midfielder doing that and making it look easy. Like, he's so good to watch. You never ever see him make mistakes, but he's always being progressive with the ball. He's never really trying to take an easy option and just, pop one off. It's always, how can I start this attack? How can I move it into a better place so that someone can get a score? And, if he continues on the trajectory, there's no doubt he'll keep improving, which is more of a scary thought for everyone else, I think.
What way would you go in terms of marking him then? And like, is there a specific man for Mayo this weekend, Michael, that you'd say he could do a job on him?
Yeah, I don't know if there's many people in the country can do a job on him, to be honest. But I suppose, like, physically, you're probably going to have to look at putting Matty Rowan on him. Maybe Aidan O'Shea spends some time in midfield as well. But Mayo have a lot of other options on the bench as well, so it's not a 70-minute job. Tom Parsons can come in. I think Sheahan O'Shea might be a bit closer back from injury. There's another body. They have a lot of big men around the middle of the field, so maybe if someone goes in, does a 35, 40-minute job, and then you switch it out and get fresh legs in there to ask a different question as well. So it's not an easy job. It's more so the graveyard. It is the graveyard shift, but it could be the winning of the game is trying to shut it down and shut him down properly.
It's funny how the debate about splitting Dublin and the money and all that kind of stuff. There's players like Fenton who can't be enjoying that conversation that's happening around them when he thinks about his own journey to get from somebody who was not heralded that much. I know there's some talk now, and it might be revisionist, it might not be. It might be the true blue Dubs understand that, you know, there was stuff going on in his family life and education and all that kind of stuff when he was 17, 18 that prevented him really from flowering as a minor and a heralded minor. But it's interesting to see somebody like that develop and how the Dubs have managed to bring somebody like that who wasn't announced as a superstar, Michael, before he becomes ultimately the biggest superstar in the game at the moment.
Yeah, and it probably shines a light on, you know, sometimes in the GA we put a bit too much probably credence in, you know, what a player is like at 17, 18, 19, and we, you know, even at that stage you try to shoehorn them into being one thing or another, and most players don't develop at that age. They're probably not at their prime until they're 25, 26, and they have a hell of a lot of learning to do. Like Larry Corbett was the same in Tipperary, didn't play in a minor under 21 team. So, like, you know, there's like, while those things are very big at that time in your life, they're not the be all and end all. And sometimes we probably should be pushing the fact that, you know, playing at that level is great, but it's not the ultimate end goal, I would say. And he's going to be the shining example of that when it comes down the line, whenever he does finish up, I would say.
Did he have a specific plan for Fenton, Padraig?
It was just stop him at midfield. The man was on him, or man marker was on him, and it was just a matter of picking him up when he got into that space. But he just bypassed that. He didn't catch much ball in midfield, but his attacking threat was phenomenal. He ran through just players with ease, lads that would be physically very, very strong for us. And just if he wasn't kicking the ball over the bar himself, he was creating scores. He was very, very hard to man to stop. He was bombing forward. His athleticism is fantastic. He has so many aspects, as Michael said. He went inside and turned around and kicked the score like a full forward. So if there was some marking him again, he changed his game. He went inside. He got himself into the game if a man marker was trying to stop his influence.
What do you do about Conor Callaghan and what do you do about Kieran Kilkenny? What's the pre-game plan and what happens in the middle of the game? You're like, okay, we need to reassess here because they've responded to what we're doing. Yeah,
they're both very physically big men and have a lot of influence on Dubs' play. What they were doing was they were just getting on ball and setting it up to lads like Small, and I know McDade chipped in a lot against us. It was, if they weren't doing it, they were going to create a chance for someone else to do it.
So that's just a selflessness in their running. And how does that manifest itself? Does that mean that you have to stay tight to them and that creates the space?
Yeah, it's just every man has to win his own battle. I know even I was probably the last man in the line and found myself on a couple of different players during the match. When they did break lines and different things and chip the ball over the bar, there was nearly more Dublin players annoyed at them for not trying to go for the goal first. So they were always striving for better in each other.
So you can hear that they're actually giving each other lip a little bit.
A wee bit, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
That's interesting. And obviously they don't bear any grudges about it, but it reminds them all the next time there's another pass there.
Yeah, and it is. It's that was at them when probably they were 12, 13 points up. You know, there was just no foot off the pedal.
And that kind of plays into your whack-a-mole analogy, which I'm just interested in going back to, Padraig. Like, is that, are the moles coming from the backs running forward, the midfields penetrating? Is it the bench? Like, that sort of assault in the sense is about 50 minutes in. Like,
that doesn't sound like much crack, Padraig.
No, it doesn't, basically. What is there a plan beforehand when you know that there are this player and that player who are going to come off the bench, and there is going to be a couple of all-stars who are going to be introduced with fresh legs for 20 minutes? Like, how do you psychologically prepare yourself for that, knowing that there might have been an eventuality where you're also approaching that situation being a few points down?
You just have to prepare yourself for every situation. I know for Mayo, they can't give Dublin a head start. As I said earlier, we were just chasing the game when we were 5 points down at half time. Like it's literally going to be attacking every 15 minutes, and just I think the longer you stay in the game with Dublin, the more doubt is going to creep into their heads. We prepared as well as we could. Now I know we didn't play as well as we could on the day, and that was a massive factor that was down to our ultimate losing the game. But I just think I think Mayo will mix it up better than them as we did.
Well, could I just get your take on that then, Michael, in terms of the specifics of this weekend? Like you've mentioned, you've played this Mayo team 3 times. I think it's a fact, really. They need to be even better than those 2 seasons in which you played them in the past for them to get anywhere near Dublin this weekend. Are they better than the last 2 times you played them?
If you went directly off the scoreline, yeah, like we were closer in 16, closer in 18, and they blew us away in one half really this year. So look, I'd say they are probably maybe a bit closer. They've reinvented their team. They've have a huge changeover in personnel, but have retained the things that make them good, which is the really strong running through the middle of the field. Very clinical when they get chances up front, and very physical in the tackle, and well able to turn the ball over. So, like, look, they have a chance. I think like this Dublin team is the best that's ever played the game, though you need to factor that in. And in any other era, maybe this Mayo team would be well fancied going into an All-Ireland final, but it's just what the level of opposition that they're coming up against has been unprecedented in the GAA, really.
Yeah, that dominance isn't really great for the evolution of the sport. It's kind of hard for us to have that conversation without then opening up the whole splitting Dublin, that conversation. But we saw the Limerick hurlers reach a level of dominance this year. Great teams bubble up, Michael, and I don't know where you stand on all those comparisons that we're seeing at the moment.
They do. But you can see a lot of the hallmarks actually that shared between Limerick and Dublin. You see the ferocity that Limerick brought to the game around the middle of the field, which is the same as what Dublin do to players coming out against them. You can see the selfless running. You can see, their decision making. Both teams' decision making. Limerick's is probably the best at the moment. They never take silly shots. They're always working the ball to the man in the best position to take the score. Same with Dublin as well. So, like, look, teams do bubble up. I think it's slightly overplayed. The Dublin's dominance team. I think there is a golden generation of players that have been there since 2013, 2015 and onwards. And what comes behind them, who knows what's going to happen then. There has been basically 2 teams that have rolled in together, and they've been lucky that that has happened. The younger guys were able to learn off some All-Ireland winners who were there and now have taken it on to a whole new level. But it'll be interesting to see in 4 or 5 years' time when a lot of those guys start to step on what does come through behind.
We did want to ask you about Gearóid Hegarty as a footballer as well. Looks like he's going to be hurler of the year, and deservedly so. What a season he's had. But apparently he's not bad at football.
Oh, incredible, yeah. I would have played against him in Division 4 in 13 and 14 or 14 and 15. An incredible footballer, quite similar to what you see on the hurling field, just glides across the ground, but had all the skills, could play, was brilliant in the air. They moved him between midfield and the full forward line seamlessly. And look, I'd say if you probably chatted to him, he'd say that his experience playing senior football maybe, grounded him for going in playing senior hurling as well. And it's no harm that players can move between both codes. It's certainly not been a detriment to him, considering he's very probably going to be hurler of the year this year. But yeah, fantastic footballer, was brilliant. And we always had massive battles with Limerick again this year again. So yeah, he was always one we had to watch out for.
It's prediction time, and it's not easy, but it's a bit easier, I think, because we have a team who are quite heavy favourites here. Are Dublin going to win by 4 or 5 points, or will there be an upset?
I'd love to see an upset, obviously. Just the way Dublin's dominance has gone over the years. So my heart says Mayo, but my head says Dublin.
And in a close game?
in a close game, I'd love to see it close up until the fourth quarter. I think then that's Mayo's time to mix it.
Right. Michael, what hope do you hold out for a Mayo victory?
Again, like, look, I think I said it earlier, any other era you'd really fancy them going into it, but it's just the fact of what they're coming up against. And what stands out for me is the game where Dublin put 2-6 on them in a third quarter. Is it last year or the year before?
Last year, yeah.
And it's just that power play. You know, can they withstand that? Is what kind of is really kind of pushing me towards Dublin. I think Mayo will be close. I think they have the physicality to go against Dublin. I think it'll be a game featuring a lot of athleticism, a lot of hits. You know, it'll be really good to watch. It's a pity there won't be a crowd there to see it, because you know, there'll be people bouncing off each other. But I just think Dublin just have the edge. They've had the edge over Mayo for the last while, and it's always hard to push, you know, in that situation. So I probably lean towards Dublin. I think it'll be close, but I think they'll get their purple patch, and I think that could just move the game away from Mayo.
Michael, we had you on the show a couple of days after you beat Cork to win your first Munster title since 1935. Padraig, I think this is the first time we've had you on since that unbelievable day for Cavan as well. How great have the last few weeks been, even in the aftermath of the Dublin defeat? Has there been a deep appreciation for that first Ulster title in 23 years?
Yeah, it's the buzz is still there in the county. You have kids in school that's still they're playing football now. The interest is there. Around the county, there's still a buzz in families and different things like that. Their Cavan flags are still flying. They've become the new Christmas decorations. So it's great to see around towns and around different small areas and different things. Just the fun and the buzz it brings to those areas is just fantastic.
Good stuff, lads. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Right, good stuff there from Padraig and from Michael. If you want to get in touch this morning and tell us what you think is going to happen in the All-Ireland football final, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the number to get in touch with. We're going to bring the Tight Five from Neil Treacy. Lots of rugby stories to get to at around about 8:45 this morning. And we're going to speak with John Duggan in just a moment. I'm going to run you through the sports pages, though. Fantasy World. Oh, sorry, there's the Hassan Hootle used lockdown to write a book, says Matt Letitia. What did you do, Eoin?
What?
Finished Netflix?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't actually finish Netflix. I mean, if you're that's how pathetic my lockdown productivity was.
The back page, Crocodile Tears, is Jose Mourinho ramping up the mind games, and I think it might work. Mourinho rubbishes Klopp's injury crisis. Gaffer lists cop site in amazing dig. I've got 10 out 2, including kids. The Mirror back page, Fantasy World. Jose mocks Klopp's injury list and says Virgil is the only big star missing. I mean, Diego Jota missing. A few others there, isn't it? Factually incorrect, but sure, that never really stopped him in the past. The column this morning from Donal Lenihan, Leinster relentlessly pursuing 5th Golden Star. And then Cork GA's finances, not great, you'd have to say. Cork GA's current liabilities outstrip its current assets by 16.2 million, largely as a result of the cost accrued in redeveloping Páirc Uí Chaoimh in 2020. They owe 11 million to Croker, and the ongoing bank debt stands at 21 million. So it's not just the FAI who has difficulty paying for their stadiums, it turns out. The Telegraph this morning, concussion crisis fear for rugby league, which is a fairly obvious thing that's going to happen in that sport too, in the aftermath of all the other sports. The Star have Jose's Anfield rap. They've dressed Jose Mourinho up as a rapper. And they also have a save from Sam Johnson last night, which gave Slaven Bilic potentially his last and best result as West Brom manager. It looks like he's going to be sacked, according to the papers this morning. That's the headline in the back of the Times. Bilic facing the sack at West Brom. And Chelsea's 95th minute agony. Interesting time for Frank Lampard, for his team to be stuttering, just as everybody else is stuttering. The fact is everybody's stuttering, so maybe that's okay, is it? Is that...
Frank Lampard, well, Chelsea this season haven't beaten a team above 12th in the Premier League. They failed to win every single one of those games, and 2 weeks ago we were talking about them as title challengers.
Cohen ready for reunion with O'Callaghan. So a Mayo player says build-up to this year's final has been easier than in previous years. Limerick proved that the best win out even in this strange year. I mean, Limerick are definitely the best hurling team, and it turns out by a significant distance. Mayo must learn from lessons of the past, but champions Dublin should still find a way. That's Dar O'Shea's column. Jose questions Red's woes. It's essentially the same thing. It's Mourinho versus Klopp, yeah, that's it. What injury crisis is the other one? John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you.
Jaron, Owen, how are you guys?
I'm very well. What's tickling your fancy this morning?
Well, obviously it's Spurs and Liverpool, and it's just really fascinating to see. It's not a title race game, but it's just a really interesting game with Chelsea and Manchester City slipping up last night. Chelsea losing 2-1 to Wolves. They were a goal up. Olivier Giroud scored, but then Pedro Neto banged in the winner in injury time. So second defeat in a row for Chelsea after 17 games unbeaten. And then City a 1-1 draw with West Brom at the Etihad. And that kind of indicative of City not being at the way they were pace-wise over the last couple of years. Sam Johnston was amazing in goal for West Brom, and great to see Dar O'Shea putting in such an assured performance against City away from home. But the bad news for West Brom fans of Slaven Bilic is that he's set to be sacked today. The club have lost patience with the Serbian, and a 1-1 draw, not good enough, and they're 19th in the table. So Slaven Bilic set to be the first managerial casualty of the Premier League season. So it's all about Spurs and Liverpool tonight. Both have 25 points after 12 games. Liverpool have won 6 out of 6 at home in the league this season. At Anfield, they thumped Leicester, they thumped Wolves. They've had a very good record over Spurs in recent times, including the Champions League final. But Jose has got Spurs motoring. Kane and Son are very dangerous. And Jose has also said that both teams will be very strong on the pitch.
Wijnaldum is not injured. Salah is not injured. Firmino is not injured. Mané is not injured. Van Dijk is injured. And Van Dijk is a very good player, of course. But give me Liverpool list of injuries and compare that list of injuries with what is the best Liverpool team. And then I can give you a list of 10 injuries at Tottenham. We have 2 kids of the under 16 with injuries. We have 2 other in the under 21, and we have 3 in the under 23. We have Lamela and Tanganga, and here you have a list of 10 players. Baptiste Lloris is injured? No. Alderweireld injured? No. Dyer injured? No. Reguilón injured? No. Harry Kane injured? No. Son injured? No. Lucas injured? No. So where are the injuries? There are injuries normal. It's normal. James Milner is injured. Lamela is injured. You know, and every club has now and again injuries. Liverpool has a big injury, which is Van Dijk.
What's going on? What's this? How are we supposed to interpret this?
Well, I've just realised I called Slaven Bilic Serbian, which means I'll never be welcome in the taverns and the hostelries of Zagreb, Split and Dubrovnik ever again, given he's a Croatian hero of the 1998 World Cup. So that's when you do things off the cuff. The Jose thing, I just think he's got his mojo back, and he's like he's having a bit of crack at a press conference. There's no anger in Jose at Spurs that I've seen so far. There's no petulance. There's no shielding and defending the players because he doesn't need to, because the way they're playing the game. So it's exciting, but I feel very apprehensive about having any hope about it, because I'm sure it will go wrong very soon.
Do you actually think that?
I just look. They've already been second in the league in 2017, so they've already had 2 seasons under Pochettino, 16 and 17, where they were thereabouts for the league title. Second means nothing. Winning is all that matters. Winning trophies, winning league titles, and the Europa League, the UEFA Cup, or the League Cup would be nice things to win. And Jose probably win one of them, but it's all about winning the Premier League. And when you feel like you're playing really well, you don't want to get your hopes up to be disappointed. And that's what could happen, especially if one of Kane or Son gets injured. But they're definitely capable of beating anybody, and they comfortably beat Manchester City, Manchester United and Arsenal this season already. So I'm fascinated to see what happens tonight.
I don't think it is going to fall away this season. I just feel like the players are at the right maturity. The manager's at a stage in his career where, you know, he can have these pot shots at Klopp and send his team out to be ultra defensive tonight. They can be completely happy with a 0-0 draw and no shots tonight. And they're big winners from that, because it's beginning to assert to Liverpool that they're proper title contenders and they're not going to go away. And he's having these shots in the media, and suddenly Klopp is looking at something that isn't essentially saying he's the greatest thing that's ever happened to English football, which is how the coverage has largely been since he arrived. So, I don't know. I'm very interested in that. Tommy has reminded me there, you got the haircut yesterday. How did it go? The haircut was uneventful because we've been going to the same guy for 20 years. So we know each other now. And obviously the thing about it is, like, and it's great to see, like, they only allow one person into the hairdressers, and then you got to wait, and you go in and you wear your mask for the whole time, and you get your haircut. And it's a Christmas haircut. The shopping's pretty much bought. Only got the drinks to buy now. Only got the wine to buy. But pretty much everything is in the house. And one of the things that I really kind of missed was going into a bookshop, lads, and just like looking through sports books and looking at the sports books they got for Christmas, and all, even like the classic books that are still there. If you want Agassi's book, or if you want Simon Cooper, or if you want Champagne Football, which is a newer book, or whatever you want to get, you can get. And that's something that I definitely missed when we were locked down. But on the Jose thing, Spurs, the only worry I have about Spurs is that they were 1-0 up against Palace the other day, and they didn't go on. They didn't press on and go and try and win the game. And that is a little bit of a worry, even if they're so defensive, that if they do go ahead, they sit back too much. But yeah, it is interesting to see that they're putting it up to Liverpool. But Liverpool, to me, on the basis of what I've seen so far, are definitely clear favourites to win the league. Regarding what's going on elsewhere, not a lot, to be honest, folks. Tipperary won in the Munster Under-20 Hurling Championship last night, beat Waterford 5-18 to 3-16. The Kerry footballers won in the Minor Football Championship, beat Cork 21 points to 115 after extra time. I saw the young lad in the darts. I was watching him last night. Keane Barry, 18 years of age, got beaten, but it's great to see a young lad at 18 years of age from Meath in the darts. But other than, like, this is just Premier League all the way at the moment, folks. Premier League and haircuts and books. Yeah, there's a Ronnie Drew story, goes into the barber's to get his haircut, and the barber says to him, "How would you like it?" And he says, "In complete silence." Is that you, JD? Yeah, the only thing that's said, and the only thing that's ever been said for probably 20 years was myself and the barber at the end is, "Bit of gel." Really? Yeah. 20 years of rapport and not a single conversation. That's perfect. That's like a strong, robust relationship right there, Owen. God, this is the most male conversation I've ever heard. And I go, yeah. Now, to be fair, it was like that for about 15 years. In recent times, the whole atmosphere has thawed a bit. So we do chat about sport, and he knows who I am, whatever. So it is more friendly, but I suppose I'm a shy person off the camera and off the mic. It was for years, bit of gel. Right. I can't hand over the €15. I'm like, maybe it's just me, but the last couple of years I've been all for the chats. And Kerry folk are friendlier folk anyway, Owen. You know, sure, like you're talking about, look, will David Clifford do this? Will you ever beat the Dubs? All these kind of conversations sure happen in the barbershops of Kerry. You know, it's like Eddie Murphy and Coming to America. You know, it's the chat and all the barbershop and all the great fun. Yeah. Over Owen's head, it's like cultural reference. He's like, what decade was that, John? Yeah, but I thought it was just like kind of a moody teenager thing, kind of like a goth thing where you don't talk to your barber. But clearly not. Clearly, grown adult people also don't talk to their barber for a long, long time. So I don't know. I think it's good that you're now talking. It's good that you're opening up, and I'm looking forward to following the two of you in your relationship over the next little while. John, good stuff. All right, guys. Thanks for that. It's John Duggan with us this morning, bringing us up to date on what's happening in the world of sport. It is 8:45 here, 087 918 180 if you want to tell us your tales of barber and woe. We'd happily share them with people this morning. Right, time for us to turn our attention to the Type 5 with Neil Treacy. Neil, good morning to you. Morning, folks. It's funny how Danny Cipriani is the little butterfly that sets off the tsunami in Irish rugby, but it might be, or it might not be. Maybe this is the conspiracy theorist theory that the rugby fans in particular didn't know they needed to make them anxious this morning. 100%. Like, I mean, maybe the tsunami might be kind of a bit over the top, but in theory, like it is Danny Cipriani deciding he wants to leave Gloucester is the chain reaction that turns all this Ben Healy talk from being what
probably we all might have suspected maybe a little bit of kite flying, you know, an agent just trying to do his job to, you know, in contract season to add an extra little bit onto a potential contract for his client. All of a sudden now, the fear is real from a Munster fan's point of view about Ben Healy and a potential move to Glasgow, because to go through that chain reaction yesterday afternoon, Danny Cipriani announces that, I suppose to the surprise of people in Ireland, it doesn't seem like it came as a big surprise to people in England that he was leaving Gloucester with immediate effect. Now, reading through those stories, a lot of people were suggesting at the time that Gloucester had been in contact maybe with Adam Hastings of the Glasgow Warriors, their out half, and quick as a flash, within about 2 hours, Gloucester themselves had actually confirmed the news that they had signed Adam Hastings. So when that flashed up on your Twitter timeline, all of a sudden you're thinking straight away it wasn't, like, that's a decent signing, whatever. It was, okay, the Glasgow Warriors are losing their first choice out half, while also sniffing around Munster's bright young prospect, Ben Healy. So all of a sudden things are looking incredibly real and live around that transfer and the potential of it. And it just means that the IRFU, they have to get straight into these negotiations in January, and they have to make him a decent offer. By all accounts, it seems that Glasgow have actually upped their offer again to Ben Healy over the last couple of weeks, probably knowing that Adam Hastings was going to leave. But I think there would be an enormous backlash from Munster fans. I think it would be absolutely enormous if Ben Healy was allowed to leave Ireland and move to the Glasgow Warriors, coming out of an academy deal in the next few months. I think there would be absolute uproar if that was to happen. And I think Munster have to put the contract out and keep him, because they don't necessarily know what the long-term future is going to be of Joey Carberry. You know, he hasn't played in the guts of a year. He has been prone to injuries in the past. At that stage, you're kind of banking on Carberry and JJ Hanrahan as two senior out-halves in the squad. There needs to be a third option there. I know they have options, other options in the academy, but to let a player like with the potential of Ben Healy go would be just unforgivable, I think, particularly with the way Munster fans maybe might have seen the likes of, you know, Donncha Ryan leaving in the past and things like that. And I think it would sting a lot if they were to let him go.
You just start him now and just put him up to number one out half at this point before Carberry comes back, assuming he...
They were about to, though, weren't they? Isn't that the thing?
Possibly. Well, like we were kind of wondering this week, was it going to happen? You know, was he going to get that start in Claremont? And now, obviously, he's injured, so we don't really know when he is going to be back at this stage. And that injury on Saturday or on Sunday evening from he was basically targeted with those two hits from Alex Dombrant and Joe Marler. Speaking to Johan van Graan afterwards, like Van Graan, having dealt with him plenty of times at press conferences, he's a very, very cool man. He doesn't get rattled particularly easy. There have been incidences when we've been down in UL speaking to him around things like Gerbrand Grobler, things that have been quite controversial when, you know, he might have been a little bit prickly towards us in the media. But Sunday was the first time I ever really saw him actually really go on the offensive. Now he wasn't like absolutely seething or anything like that. He was quite calm and collected in the way he was saying, but he made a clear point of saying, you know, some of those hits, they are not acceptable. It's just not something you do in rugby, because now we have, you know, our out half is injured.
People won't have seen it. People might not have seen the hit. So there was a no-arm tackle. It was one of them.
Yeah, so the first one was very, very late. It was from Alex Dombrant, and he just charged up. And you can actually see the way he even turned his body. He turned his body so that he actually was leading with the shoulder. It wasn't one of those ones where he just got caught on the wrong side. Like, if you were to look at the replay, you're actually asking yourself, and it was what Keith Wood was saying on commentary with me on Sunday evening, he's actually turning his body into an unnatural position to make the tackle. Now, we don't know which one of them, was it that one or a later one with Joe Marler, which one was it that actually caused the damage to the shoulder, because after both of them, he looked in a lot of pain. I saw people asking, you know, should the referee be offering more protection to Ben Healy? I don't really know what more the referee could have done. because he gave Alex Dombrant a yellow card. It wasn't a red card offence. He gave him the yellow card he could give him.
It's interesting you say that, right? It's interesting. Like at some point, all sports decide that they're going to protect their most important players. The tackle from behind gets outlawed in football, essentially after Diego Maradona's ankles get broken to the point where he can no longer play at the level that he should be playing. Marco van Basten, his career completely ruined by the fact that you were allowed to tackle from behind. In American football, you can't touch the quarterback anymore because too many of the quarterbacks who are the highest paid players were missing vast chunks of the season because cheap shots essentially were costing them injuries around the legs and ankles. And at some point, rugby's going to decide that if you do tackle an out half late or an unprotected player, so somebody who has just kicked a ball late, that it's going to be a red card. You say it's not a red card now, and I appreciate that it's not, but there's been a sea change in everybody's thoughts about the brutality and the physicality and the gladiatorial. Yeah, exactly. Of the sport, to the point where I think it's credible that these tackles will become red card tackles sooner rather than later, Neil. That's my contention, that like by the end of next season or before the next World Cup, an unprotected player who gets tackled or body checked or landed on, and if you land on them with the weight of your body, that's the other thing that they do in American football. You can't just body slam somebody when you're falling. You have to protect yourself or protect them by protecting yourself. That these are going to become red card tackles because you can't have the out halves and the skilled players being brutalised on purpose and it only be a yellow card.
I'm not so sure on that because I think aside from the instance on Sunday with Ben Healy, like there isn't a huge habit in rugby. There aren't too many instances that you could pick out every single week.
Johnny Sexton in countless games against France. Every out half I've ever watched gets done after the ball.
Quite a few years ago, those games against France. Like I don't think it happens too much, to be totally honest, these days. Like I think the comparable situation is the way they've clamped down on anything that goes near the head in the last few years, and how that those things are automatically red cards. Even complete accidents are red cards, and I think it's right that they should be, because that is the incredibly sensitive area. That is the area, the really unprotected area of a player. I don't really see what the referee could have done aside from giving a yellow card for the Dombrant one. The Joe Marler one was one of those ones where there wasn't a huge amount of force in it, so it was up in the air between a penalty and a yellow card. In the end, he went with a penalty, but the fact that he didn't give him a yellow card, I don't really think had any impact, because there weren't any more cheap shots afterwards. There wasn't anything he could have done afterwards. But no, I'm not so sure we're going to see hits like that, particularly on just one specific type of player.
Well, it's any player who is defenceless. That's the point. So it can happen at any stage. So it could be a scrum half. It could be somebody once they are defenceless, once they can't brace themselves. It's easy to make those rules. And look, I think that rugby is.
I think if there's head contact, you're going to see red cards for them. I don't think just kind of hits onto the shoulder. For me, I don't think you're going to see those as red cards.
All right, to go back to Ben Healy for a moment, it would be a disaster for Munster, and it would be a disaster for Irish rugby if their brightest current. So him and Harry Byrne are considered to be the brightest out-half prospects we have. Munster absolutely needs somebody who's homegrown to come through and take that 10 slot. It's a storied jersey. It is a massive tradition that Munster has a 10 who is respected around Europe. If they let him go to join Scotland, that would be ridiculous.
It would be, particularly if, you get the feeling if it was to happen, details would come out about, what the contract situations were, and if it was revealed or anything like that the IRFU allowed him to leave because they held off on maybe 10 to 20 grand a year, I think there would be absolute uproar for that to happen. Now, Ben Healy in 5 or 6 years could turn out to be an almighty flop. He's played 10 games of senior rugby. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but all the signs are suggesting that he's going to be an excellent player. And particularly with the way Munster are, they're at a stage where they're finally producing homegrown players that they've been criticised for not doing for the last 10 years. And if they finally started to do that, and all of a sudden one of those brightest prospects was allowed to leave because the RFU were to skimp on on a deal that they could offer him, I think there would be absolute uproar.
Yeah, I can't see the Munster fans standing for that. I mean, this is a marching on Lansdowne Road style situation. If he does end up joining Scotland, it would be absolutely ridiculous, giving Scotland the opportunity to have an out half for a decade in the whatever the league is going to be called, the Pro 16, and then also in the Six Nations, and potentially playing against us now in a World Cup. What? No thanks. Right, team selections are going to have a big impact on pools and how the provinces progress, because we know already that some teams are taking European competition a little less seriously than in other years.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because of the nature of this season's competition, where it's just 4 pool games as opposed to the usual 6, it means it's happening a little earlier than it might have in previous seasons. Like Gloucester and Northampton Saints, to name 2 in particular anyway. But it kind of just ties back into something we were talking about last week, where we're kind of seeing that because the pool stage is much shorter this time around and there are less matches, we're seeing a lot more teams going for it and kind of producing these blowout scores. Like, I was looking across at the 2 pools, and Pool B in particular, Munster's pool, of the 12 teams in that pool. So of all the teams who won games at the weekend, Munster were the only team that actually didn't win with a bonus point. So even just looking across at their game this weekend against Claremont, I mean, if they were to go there and not pick up a losing bonus point at the very, very least, then they would be in a lot of bother already, even though they were only 1-1 at that stage. Looking through some of the other teams, like Leon going up against Glasgow this weekend, Leon won by 50 odd points against Gloucester. They're playing a Glasgow side who were hammered by 40 points against Exeter. You would probably assume that Glasgow might not necessarily be particularly up for this. This could be another 5-pointer for Leon. They can go to 10 points. All of a sudden, you've got one team at maximum points from 2 games. Ulster going to Gloucester. Gloucester are probably going to throw out a second team. That means Ulster, you would probably assume they're going to get their first win of the campaign as well. Thankfully, though, there is a game in Pool B, something like Toulouse-Exeter, where 2 sides who had pretty good wins last week are going up against each other, and finally you're looking at one of those teams and going, thank God someone's going to be taking points from each other. But it just is a bit disappointing that the DPCR would have pulled enormous amount of strings and completely restructured this tournament for a lot of teams to get them into the competition and to make sure that everybody who was in contention to qualify didn't miss out on a fractured season in the Premiership or the Pro 14 or the Top 14, only to, after one game, see them throwing out second-string sides. I think maybe down the line in the future, there needs to be some sort of a code of conduct, a best practice thing, where teams at the very least have to commit to playing. It's going to be tough to word it, but playing some version of their best side available to them.
Munster, the only side in Pool B who won without a bonus point. All of a sudden, that's a tricky situation.
It is, and I do think it was something I kind of hinted at last week as well. I do think at the end of this pool stage campaign, we are going to have to, when we're kind of doing our analysis on teams and kind of figuring out, had they a good tournament, had they a bad one, I don't think we can judge it solely on did they qualify for the quarterfinals or didn't they, because I think depending on the teams you're playing, you could have 3 wins out of 4. You could even have 4 wins from 4. We're not even entirely certain, and you could actually miss out on the quarterfinals simply because you weren't able to get bonus points, and you might have won away from home against particularly good teams, which in its own right is a fantastic result. So I think at the end of this in January, when we see who has and hasn't qualified for the quarterfinals, I don't think that should necessarily be the bar for us judging did they have a decent campaign. I think you have to look a little bit deeper into the performances as well.
All right. Pat Lam and John Muldoon heading back to the sports ground. Connacht can be quite proud of the rugby they're playing at the moment and the rattle that they gave Racing in Paris. They need to win their home games, though.
They do, and I think I included this just more so for the occasion than anything else, because it's just going to be it's just a nice thing for Pat Lam and John Muldoon and Conor McPhillips as well to be able to go back to the sports ground with Bristol, because granted Bristol shipped 50 points to Claremont last week, but they scored 39 of their own. They played some brilliant rugby and have been playing some brilliant rugby for the last year or two, and I just think there's a fantastic project that Pat Lam is building there at Bristol. And look, I know they've been backed by a billionaire essentially, and they're spending a lot of money, and they've brought in some world stars. But there is I've been to Bristol a couple of times before on rugby trips, and it's a brilliant rugby town. They seriously get behind the team, and there's just something fantastic that Pat Lam is doing there. And he's reaching out, and he's continuing to keep that Connacht connection as well. Like I mentioned, some of the coaches, Jay Keenan was already there, one of his ex-Connacht players, or that he brought, sorry. And in the last year or so, Ní Adialokan, one of his Pro 12 winning stars, Peter McCabe, another ex-Connacht player, has gone there as well. So he's keeping that tradition alive and keeping those links between the two. And I think it's going to be a massive pity that there's going to be no crowd at the sports ground this weekend, because you'd be sure that Pat Lam and John Muldoon, the reception they would have got, win, lose or draw this weekend between Bristol and Connacht at the sports ground, it would have been fantastic, and it just would have been a lovely occasion. Yeah, no, you can definitely see them being in the mix for Irish coaching tickets in the future, or if a provincial gig comes up that they would be interested in, they might be able to get the money they deserve this time. Home advantage or lack of it, how advantageous is it to have a fortress like Thomond Park and all of a sudden it be stripped away from you for the opposition? Yeah, it's not looking as advantageous anymore, and it seems that the crowd is specifically what seems to be making home advantage so important to teams. So, granted, some of the wins on Sunday probably evened it out a little bit more, but 7 of the 12 winners from this weekend's opening round of matches were won by the away side, and after Saturday's games, it was actually 7-1 in favour of the away teams. Ulster, they do the job against Harlequins, but now they are going to Stade Marcel Michelin to take on Clermont, one of the toughest grounds you could possibly be going to in Europe to play a game. You'd probably have it up there. Basically, that and Thomond Park seem to be the two real fortresses around Europe, and you're going to have to wonder how big of an advantage, or how much of a loss is the home advantage as such to the Clermont fans, because they make an enormous amount of noise. Munster would have seen it in the times that they would have been there, particularly back in 2015, and they were there 2007-8 as well. I'm really interested just to see how Munster deal with the occasion, how JJ Hanrahan deals with the occasion as well. He's been a player that you've questioned maybe his ability to handle the pressure sometimes, and now he's in a situation where my brother texted me saying, last night saying, if Ben Healy is out, maybe JJ Hanrahan's going to play a lot freer because there's nobody breathing down his neck. Then you're also wondering, does JJ Hanrahan start to think, all of this is now on me? I have to go out and do this. There isn't necessarily an out half in behind me. And you'd have maybe some doubts about his ability to handle those pressures, those big moments, looking back to big kicks last year that he would have missed in games. It's going to be interesting to see it, and I don't know. I'm just very curious to see how Munster handle that away game in France. I think if they come away with a losing bonus point, stop Clermont getting a bonus point themselves, it is a serviceable result, I think. But give them an outside shot at a victory. Clermont were unbelievable last weekend, though, as well, weren't they? Right. That is the problem. So many of these teams are actually really good, but it's been a brilliant competition so far, and the quality of performance that we saw from Leinster was interesting. We talked before about the set piece and how it goes for Leinster over the period. It's going to be interesting. So we're not going to just make a snap judgment on one performance last week. We're going to see how they go over the next couple of weeks before we kind of get your assessment on that versus how well it was going for Ireland. But the depth of the Leinster squad, like, we've known about it. We've known how difficult it is to get into the team. We've seen how quickly players can go from fringe Leinster to Leinster team to Ireland team. And then last week it was you're going from Ireland team to Leinster bench, and the Leinster team didn't miss a beat. Yeah, and it was, I don't know, I think it was nice, a nice kind of show of faith from Leo Cullen in particular as well, to give those guys who had been plugging away in the Pro 14 their kind of big day out in the Heineken Champions Cup. Now, I know there were some internationals brought back into the starting team, but for the most part it was guys who'd been doing it over the last few weeks and got their show of faith. And it was funny as well, you mentioned there, looking at the line-out situation, the set piece situation with Leinster, considering how many Irish players they have, we probably can't really get any read into their performance of it against Montpellier, because so many of those guys weren't involved with Ireland over the course of the last couple of months. And I just think it's incredibly impressive overall to be able to send a combination of a first team and a first team and a third team in parts as well, over to France and beating Montpellier with a bonus points. Like Montpellier, they probably aren't the level they were at maybe 2-3 seasons ago when people were tipping them to be contenders in Europe, but they're still an incredibly strong, an incredibly physical side away in France. I think that was one of the big results where you realise just the importance of home advantage as well, seeing Leinster pretty much stroll to a bonus point, like down in an incredibly tough place to go as well.
Yeah, for sure. Neil, that's this week's Type 5. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
It's Neil Treacy there. More Heineken Champions Cup action coming your way this weekend on Off the Ball on News Talk as well. A reminder, of course, that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Let me tell you about what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. At noon, it is your exclusive first listen to episode 5 of the Bernard Brogan podcast. And then live from 1 o'clock, it is our Lidl LGFA All-Ireland Final preview with Aisling O'Reilly hosting. Our 3 o'clock is a career retrospective interview with Damien Delaney's retirement piece. Our retro panel, League of Ireland players moving to England with Conan Byrne, Mark Quigley and Stephen McGuinness. And then at 6 tonight, OTB Gold, Irish football special, with Kevin Kilban interviewing Shay Given, Niall Quinn and Jason McAteer. That's good old crack. And then the show is live tonight from 7 as well. We're going to be back after these. There's a Deal or No Deal Christmas special. Keep an eye out for Jason Sherlock, our latest contestant in our new GA quiz, Scoreboard Jungle, next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB.
In 1927, Cavan Coolidge was President of the United States, and it was the last time Dublin beat Cork in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship. They have met in the championship on 15 occasions, with Cork victorious 12 times, Dublin twice and just a single draw. History, John, would tell us this will be a victory for the Leesiders. However, hurling is usually a game that takes on a life of its own.
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio.
Now you're welcome along. It's the latest edition of Scoreboard Jungle. It's our quiz, which we're running right across this very strange 2020 championship. Our score to beat is 10. Dr. Khan and Claire Egan have 10 points in the bag. It's time the Dubs had a crack, though. Jason Sherlock is with us. Jason, confidence levels are high?
Middling. Any NBA questions are of the 90s, no?
No. That's your mastermind subject. No, we'll see how you go here. So part 1, 5 questions, 30 seconds, 1 point per correct answer. So pretty straightforward. A lot of Dublin questions here coming up, so we'll see. Okay, your time starts now. Who was the captain of Dublin in the 1992 All-Ireland final?
Tommy Carr.
By how many points did Dublin beat Tyrone in the 2018 All-Ireland final?
Gonna say 7.
Who did Dublin beat in the 2011 Leinster final?
2011. I'm gonna say Wexford.
How many All-Ireland club titles have been won by Dublin clubs?
Oh, man. 38.
Okay, so let's see where you are after that. You said Tommy Carr was captain in 92. That was correct. By how many points did Dublin beat Tyrone in 2018? You said 7. It was 6.
Dean missed a free. That's why.
Yeah. You beat Wexford in 2011, and Dublin only have 8 All-Ireland club titles, which is actually a bit surprising. So you are at 2 points out of 5 from that first round.
Next round. 5 questions, yeah?
Well, the 30 seconds were up, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you have to do it in 30 seconds. How many Dublin players won Player of the Year awards between 2010 and 19 was the question that you didn't get?
And 19, so
Yeah.
5, and it would have been 8.
6.
Oh, okay.
There you go. So no harm done. 2 out of 5. We're going to the going for goal round. So this has a sudden death quality to it. 3 points per correct answer. And obviously, when you get one wrong, you're finito. So you're 2 out of 5 at the moment with the big round to come. Your time starts now. So between 2010 and 2020, how many different counties have won the Ulster Football Championship?
Cavan, Donegal, Tyrone, Monaghan. I'm going to say 4.
Correct. Good man. That was a tough question. Who knocked Mayo out of the 2010 All-Ireland Football Championship?
2010. 2010. It wasn't Fermanagh, no?
It was Longford. It was Longford.
Longford.
2010. It's a long time ago. So you end up with a very respectable 5. You've drawn level with Pat Short tonight. There are worse things in the world.
I'll take that.
Okay. Listen, brilliant sport for doing that. Thanks for everything this evening. Cheers, Jason.
Thanks, Joe. Slán.
Follow the leader. The Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV, the world's best-selling plug-in hybrid, is now available with 0% finance and a free home charge point worth €800. Leading the charge in plug-in hybrid technology, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. Book a test drive at your local dealer today. Mitsubishi. Drive your ambition. Terms and conditions apply. See mitsubishimotors.ie. Lending criteria applies. This is a hire purchase agreement provided by Bank of Ireland Finance.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
12 minutes past 9 this morning, you'll have heard Jason Sherlock on Scoreboard Jungle in the ad break there. Cork legend Dr. Colin Murphy still tied for the lead with Noel O'Leary and Claire Egan, so there's a 3-way tie. We'll see tomorrow morning if Cora Staunton can take over. We've got our remote football final roadshow coming up this week on OTB with thanks to Super Value, proud sponsors of the 2020 Senior Football Championship. Support where you're from. Some great guests lined up for our Mayo Dublin special on that one, so stay tuned to all our social channels for more details on that coming your way over the next few days. Time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training I was driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right. Phil Egan, good morning to you.
How are you doing?
Are you ready for, what are we, 12, 16, 15 days here and another 45 days of transfer madness?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a busy one because of the nature of the season, and teams at the top, their squads are looking a bit bare at the moment with injuries, and the schedule is just so packed at the moment. Obviously, a lack of a pre-season, it's showing, it's reflecting in the lack of pressing the teams are doing, also the amount of muscle injuries. So I think January could be quite a busy one.
Mauricio Pochettino is where we start. He's one of the names in the hat for the vacant Dortmund job, although TalkSport report he's unlikely to ultimately be offered the position. A question for both of you. Should Manchester United just sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, get it done before somebody else rips Mauricio Pochettino from them?
The answer would be they should do, but they won't do. Because, you know, you look at United at the moment, they're just 5 points off top spot. They have a game in hand, that's against Burnley. Who knows what happens at Anfield tonight? United then play Sheffield United tomorrow. So Solskjaer's been in much more vulnerable positions than he is now, and they haven't pulled the trigger, so they're not going to do it now.
The Pochettino thing would have made a lot of sense 2 months ago, after the hammering at the hands of Pochettino's old club. I don't see why they would have proceeded to this point only to sack Solskjaer now. I think their form this season would have to nosedive completely for them to actually push Solskjaer out at this point. I think he's the manager for the season, and I think they've actually been quite good over the last few weeks. So no, I don't think they're going to do it. But if Mauricio Pochettino is saying, yes, I would love to be Manchester United manager and I will sign up now, I think the correct course of action would be, yeah, sack Solskjaer, be ruthless and bring Pochettino in, but it ain't going to happen.
Okay, so we don't think that's going to happen. Our rating for that is very low. Following the runaway success of Diogo Jota at Anfield, Diogo Jota, I keep getting that wrong. Which other Wolves attacker should Jurgen Klopp sign? Eoin?
All of them. All of them. Wolves are the new feeder club for Liverpool FC. It is plain to see all of these diminutive attackers make sense. You have to be fast, but most importantly, you have to be small. If these Wolves attackers were on Tinder, their buyer would say, I'm less than 5'5", because apparently that matters. And it does matter to Jurgen Klopp, because Daniel Podence is firing on all cylinders. Pedro Neto is firing on all cylinders. They both look like brilliant players who have managed to carry the mantle in the absence of Diogo Jota this season. obviously, the absence of Raúl Jiménez is going to rob them of a lot of goals. Didn't matter last night. 2 brilliant finishes. Podence has gone to another level this season. And I think we're going to start to see a Southampton-esque situation here where Klopp is like, this guy did okay for us. Here's another guy who does the exact same thing for that club, who can press well, who is a great finisher. And I wouldn't be surprised to see one of them go to Anfield next year. So which one would you actually sign at this moment? Neto probably has a higher ceiling at this point, but Podence probably has a greater potential to succeed immediately.
Phil?
Yeah, I think they're both really top players, but I don't think it's going to go quite down the Southampton route just yet. I think Jota is a player that it was kind of a surprise the day it happened, because obviously Liverpool went after Thiago and that was the one that grabbed all the headlines. And then a few hours later it emerged that Jota's deal was going to be done. And I think Liverpool fans were quite happy with that, because they looked at the front three and they thought the backup isn't great. And we've kind of seen that at Craven Cottage on Sunday when Jota is out injured. Liverpool pressing for a winner and they're bringing on Divock Origi. And as good as he was the season they won the Champions League, that's as good as it's ever got for Origi at Liverpool. So they definitely, you can see them adding to their attack in the next couple of seasons, because that front three is going to stay together forever. But I'd say they probably have their eye on a few other players before the likes of Neto and Podence. But certainly you could throw them into the Liverpool team and you'd be pretty confident they'd be effective.
Okay, so we don't think there's going to be a signing. You're just speculating that this is happening.
Oh, completely making this up. But I just think it just fits. It absolutely fits with what Liverpool are trying to do, and may as well sign Conor Cody while they're at it.
Well, look, made-up transfer rumours, that's the whole staple diet of deal or no deal. Barcelona presidential candidate, I should say, a little bit premature there, Emily Rousseau has said that Messi's wages are unsustainable, increasing speculation that he will leave the club in the summer. He also said he'd love to reunite Messi and Neymar, but the club can't afford to. Elsewhere, Mbappe is being linked with a move to Real Madrid in the summer. So let's start with the Barcelona rumours first. Messi's joining Manchester City at the end of the season, right? We all know this. It's a done deal, no?
I wouldn't be so sure on that.
Go on.
No, I mean, like the players there, obviously you've mentioned Messi, Neymar, Mbappe. Obviously that's the triangle there. What happens? You kind of think if Mbappe's going anywhere, it's going to be to Real Madrid. So that would leave him out of the PSG team. Neymar is still there. Neymar's not going back to Barcelona. Barcelona can't afford that. So if maybe Messi and Neymar are PSG, but if you're Messi, you know, the prospects of leaving Barcelona to go to Manchester, whatever about what the club are trying to do in terms of City, if they're trying to rebuild, because looking at them last night, still plenty of work for Pep Guardiola to do. And this is uncharted territory for Guardiola, where he's having to rebuild a team, but also he's at the club longest. This is his longest spell as a manager. So, some of the players last night, you're just wondering, is the message now not getting through to them anymore? Is Pep Guardiola just zero crack that after a while, it's great when you're winning, but now that Liverpool have dethroned them as the Premier League champions, they can't win the Champions League, the players just think, Pep, do you know what, just leave it for today, would you? I just want to sit over here in a bit of peace and quiet, and you're wrecking my head. Like, you see him last night trying to take, I thought he was going to put up the fourth officials board for injury time last night, saying, move over, Anthony Taylor. We're both balls. No one will know if I put up the board, and I'll put up 10 minutes injury time, so we'll try and find that winner, not the 4 that you put up instead.
I think everybody thought that the new contract for Guardiola until 2023 would give him this renewed sense of energy. And I think we perhaps failed to factor in the fact that there is a whole grueling season full of a global pandemic going on in which he has to navigate before he gets his hands on Lionel Messi. I think that's a big factor. Does he actually honour the contract all the way up to 2023 would be my question, rather than will he get Messi and will they be able to see out?
We can't answer that in the next 5 weeks, Owen. So that's an excellent question. But, you know, come back to me in 2023 when you've proven that point.
I would basically make the point that I don't think that it's a guarantee that Pep will necessarily be Manchester City manager this time next year. And I think Messi is a very Pep signing, naturally, for Manchester City. I think this season could grind Pep down.
If you're Pep, and there's an opportunity to spend the amount of money that they're going to spend on wages for Messi, do you not try and make the case that actually, I've had my time with Messi, it was great, but Mbappe's the one I want. We're just assuming that Mbappe's going to Real Madrid.
Yeah, but that is an assumption for sure. Like, I guess so. I guess that if you're looking for something for a more sustainable future, and the way Manchester City as a club want to go, Kylian Mbappe would be a longer-term signing. But this isn't how Pep is going to be thinking. That window of his contract is what he's going to be thinking, and the last squeeze of Lionel Messi, who's going to get that? And he wants to be the manager to get that. So it's him versus the club, I think. Yeah. And the club might want Mbappe, but Pep wants Messi.
Is the juice worth the squeeze, Eoin? That is the question you've got to ask about Leo Messi at this stage. On a scale of 1 to 10 from both of you, starting with you, Phil, Messi comes to Pep's Manchester City, 1 to 10.
I'm going to say right now, I'm going to say about 3.
Messi links up with Neymar at PSG.
I'm going to go a bit higher with that, maybe for a 5.
Messi and Neymar are reunited in Paris and Mbappe stays 2.
I'm saying 1.
Okay.
Right, I would agree with your first 2, but I think the last one, that is a 6. I think Messi to PSG could happen, and I think if Messi's going to come to PSG, then I think they're probably making that communication to Kylian Mbappe and saying, hang around for this. So I think that if that happens, then Mbappe stays potentially.
Okay, 1 season is all you want.
That would be quite the front 3, wouldn't it?
Who plays in the middle?
Messi just, like, basically you've got to get 7 outfield players to do all the work for you. Just get the ball to the 3 lads.
The answer is Choupo-Moting, Phil.
No. Oh, you've got Moise Keane now.
Moise Keane, sorry, yeah.
OTBAM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It's widely reported Slaven Bilic is facing the sack as West Brom manager, and that decision could be announced in the coming hours. Sam Allardyce, Nigel Pearson and Mark Hughes are being tipped to take over, maybe together.
Did you forget Alan Pardew?
Can Big Sam save the club from the drop? Is he the right man for the job? They have 7 points after 13 Premier League matches. The script says they have 7 pints after 13 Premier League matches. It was a Freudian pint of wine slip.
Sure, Alan Pardew was gainfully employed, Phil.
Plus, he was at West Brom as well. Do they want to go back there? And I don't know if you're aware of this, lads. Sam Allardyce has never been relegated from the Premier League.
Look, at some point that record's going to stop. Yeah. Or maybe it's not, Maybe Sam Allardyce is exactly the manager you want in. You get him in for your 6 months and then you're still a Premier League team next year, and I don't know. You could Eddie Howe the gig then. I don't know. Somebody the gig?
What are the odds on this season, Jose Mourinho being the #1 manager and Sam Allardyce being the 17th manager? Just when we thought that times change and there is such a thing as a future and that, COVID might change the world, we end up where Jose wins the Premier League and Sam Allardyce just about narrowly escapes relegation.
And Big Sam gets the LMA Manager of the Year award and Jose has a huff.
Absolutely.
Or you think back to Jose, he's going for the league title. Big Sam parks the bus and Big Sam says, I've done it again. I've out-tacticked him, just like I did when he was the Chelsea manager. But watching West Brom last night, Darragh O'Shea's performance very encouraging. Defensively, they were good, but they just have a serious lack of goals. 10 goals they've scored this season in their 13 games. And remember, 3 of those were in that freak first half against Chelsea. So where's he going to get the goals from? They brought on Charlie Austin last night, and every time they hoofed the ball clear, it seemed it was as far away from Charlie Austin as possible. And he was just looking at them going, do you think I'm going to run after that? So they need to get goals into the team. We know if Big Sam goes in, first thing he'll do is he'll try to shore them up at the back. But actually, they have been okay at the back in recent games, apart from that Palace one. But you have to factor in there was a red card there, and Crystal Palace are probably one of the worst teams to play against if you need to go chasing goals, because they've obviously got really quick counter-attacking players.
Okay, so who from this list, quickly?
Nigel Pearson. I think that's who it's got to be, doesn't it, Phil?
That not go tits up the last place he was?
Watford. It started so well at Watford, yeah. I mean, if West Brom might be thinking if he starts the way he did at Watford last season, that might be good enough to keep us up. But I don't know. I think Nigel Pearson maybe isn't the wisest choice there. If I was picking any of them, I actually would go for Sam Allardyce. It's 2 years since he was there. He's been obviously doing some punditry work, but who wouldn't want Big Sam back in the Premier League?
Right. We told you yesterday that Paul Pogba's agent, Mino Raiola, believes his client will remain at Old Trafford until the end of the season. It was just a misunderstanding, a mistranslation or something or other. Do you expect the World Cup winner to shine in the shop window or to down tools? Where will Pogba end up, Phil?
I think he'll just do what he's done since he joined United or rejoined them in 2016. He'll have his moments. So you think back to the West Ham game where he scores that brilliant goal, came on against Leipzig and made a difference. And it just seems that when you think things have clicked with Pogba, then he takes a few steps back, and that's just the frustration of him. Where, he hasn't been consistent enough. The realistic destination for him seems to be Juventus. They want him. He wants to go there, so why not make it happen?
Okay, and that's in the summer.
In the summer, yeah.
Right. Where do Manchester United need to strengthen in this window? Do they already have the raw material in the squad to make the leap forward?
I think they're already doing that. I think, as we said at the top here, I think Solskjaer over the last few months has actually had an okay time of it. I know there's been some really low moments, and the Champions League has probably been the proof of that, and it was a tough group. I'd be interested to see how things change if Pogba does leave in the summer and where things go from there, to see, does Van de Beek get more of prominence? Does Cavani start to come into things in the second half of this season in particular? Like, he's started so well. It's just the sustainability of all that and how long Cavani has left in him, because he seems to have made a transformative impact in every game he's played in. Like, where do you actually strengthen? The talk was of full-backs last summer, and are we seeing enough of Telles, for example, on the left flank? That's probably a question that needs to be answered. And Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the right, is he attacking enough? Because the way every team plays at the moment, the full-backs seem to be central to it. So, like, I think that there are a number of areas you could point towards, but I think once Pogba goes out of the club, what sort of freedom will that allow? I think that'll be the key question.
Yeah, that's far away though, right? So you should be buying now with the Pogba money that you know is coming in the summer, getting a slight discount, and also getting the 6-month leap on betting those players in. Like, if you think back, they messed around with Bruno in the summer and then had to get him because there was a complete crisis in the winter transfer. If they'd signed him from the start of the year, if they'd signed Harry Maguire at the start of the transfer window, maybe Maguire would have betted in quicker. Maybe he would be better further along. Maybe the communication, he's obviously there long enough now. Harry Maguire is who Harry Maguire is. But do your transfer business early is the rule I'm saying that they should be sticking to here. And now is a good time to be doing some business for Manchester United.
Absolutely. I think the problem there, like, if you're looking at their back four, they try to bring in Telles to replace Luke Shaw to try and have a more dynamic left back. Now, it depends what formation they're playing, but it was just interesting, something that Solskjaer said after the Leipzig game last week, where he basically thought Telles should have been a bit cleverer to go down and get a free out for one of the Leipzig goals. Luke Shaw seems to come back in there. Now, Luke Shaw is a very good defender, but he's not getting up and down that wing. Wan-Bissaka seems to be the guy that he would stay back after training and challenge the attackers to say, come on, take me on one-on-ones. No one gets by me. But positionally, he's not great. When he goes forward, he never pulls the trigger first time to put a cross in. He just doesn't have the confidence to do so. Harry Maguire is not a captain. Unfortunately, Solskjaer has made his bed there, and he has to stick with it. Lindelof gets all the stick, but Maguire and Lindelof is not going to inspire you to do anything. He has the answer there for his goalkeeper to bring Dean Henderson in, but he keeps picking De Gea. So some of the answers are there already. Solskjaer isn't actually finding those solutions. But I think if you want to progress, if you want to become a more attacking team, you got to have better attacking fullbacks. Definitely need a better centre half. And the one position, we've talked about it for years with United, a really top-class central midfielder that basically runs the game. And they just don't have that at the moment. Pogba was meant to be that player, but that's not who he is. And Cavani has looked good. What we've seen of him, his movement is excellent. Anthony Martial was meant to be the future. He's kind of going hot and cold at the moment. So there's still a lot to improve on. But what we said earlier on, things in terms of their league position aren't so bad. Bruno Fernandes shows what can be done in January, that people seem to be put off about signing players in January. Liverpool signed Van Dijk in January. Liverpool signed Suarez in January. United signed Bruno Fernandes in January. These signings can work out.
Fernando Torres joined Liverpool in January as well, didn't he?
No.
That was Chelsea.
He joined Chelsea. Right. Andy Carroll joined in January.
It was Carroll and Suarez were together, weren't they? Rapid fire here, and I mean absolute rapid fire. Arsenal are open to offers for Swiss midfielder Granit Xhaka. Owen, is it time to get him out of the club?
Yes.
Spurs chairman Daniel Levy has indicated that they're willing to allow Dele Alli to leave the club on an 18-month loan deal in the January window. Everton are being linked with the 24-year-old, as are Paris Saint-Germain still. Would it be a savvy move to bring him to Merseyside? Phil?
No.
Yeah, he always scores at Goodison Park as well.
Look, I mean, if that's a thing, you think he's washed up?
Yeah.
At 24. Ooh. Juve's German midfielder, Sami Khedira, is 33. He also wants out. He's been sidelined there. Could be on his way to Everton in January. Should Everton make this deal happen, Phil?
I think so. They need squad depth.
Right. Fair point. Where's this Everton team ceiling?
It's very hard to break into the top six at the moment. I mean, look at the league table. Even Southampton are playing Arsenal tonight. Southampton look unbelievable. Their biggest problem, though, is going to be Ralph Hasenhüttl. You mentioned Poch to Dortmund. If I was Dortmund, I'd be looking at Hasenhüttl.
Good shout. That is deal or no deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. My thanks to Phil for bringing us this week's Christmas special, deal or no deal. Jermaine Pennant was our special with Paddy Power last night. We're going to bring you a little bit of that. Kieran Donaghy's on tomorrow from 8 o'clock. David Myler is watching Liverpool Spurs for us, and there is much more as well to get your teeth stuck into on tomorrow's show. Make sure you stay tuned to OTB Sports Radio across the day for the brilliant lineup that we have there, including the live show with Aisling O'Reilly from 1, previewing the LGFA final this weekend too. But for now, sit back, relax and enjoy some Jermaine Pennant goodness.
How was Wenger in all of this? Was he very involved in your life and checking in on you, or was it a bit more, listen, do your own thing, kid?
No, I wouldn't say he was checking in because I was still, at that point, I joined Arsenal. I was with the youth team then. So it'll be more the Liam Brady would be kind of, looking over me more than Arsene. It would be that kind of, because he was the head of recruitment, head of the youth policy. So it would have been Liam Brady who really had hands-on with me. Any detail, it would be Liam Brady. Any trouble, it would be Liam Brady. It would be talking to me and giving me a stern telling off. But at the same time, he was a softie as well. And I'm very grateful for what he did for my career at Arsenal, and always had my corner when I did come off the rails, and obviously then when you get to the first team, it's more you've got to do with Arsene.
Liam Brady's obviously a big figure over here. I mean, legendary Arsenal player, as you obviously know, but big figure in Irish football as well. Such a brilliant player. Was he helping you out with your game in specific ways, showing you how he wanted you to play, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, he was obviously just telling me to be, at times, more positive, express. He was, he knew my ability, and sometimes he would point me in the right direction. But then you also had the coaches as well. You had Don Howe.
Okay.
He was a fantastic coach. Rest in peace. Don Howe, he was a legend at Arsenal, and he was a great coach, and I learned a lot from him as well. But like I said, Liam Brady would always be watching the games, all the games, the youth team games we played in. He would always give advice as best he could. So, I always took it on board, always listened to him because I know what of a legend he is, what a great player he was. He was a similar player on the left with his left foot. So it was great to have them kind of people around me. Hence why I probably got to where I have, because of the nurturing that I had at Arsenal with the fantastic coaches we've done now, Liam Brady, Arsene Wenger, Pat Rice. So, yeah.
So you're trying to break into a pretty special team, obviously, once you start training with the senior team. This is like Invincibles territory. So, look, that's not going to be easy. How did you find that step up? How did you find training with them? How did you find that period?
The step up, training with him was fine. I knew my ability, and Arsene wouldn't let me be in the first team changer and be in the squad if he didn't feel I was up to the job. So, obviously, it's a big step up from the youth team and what you're playing. Playing with the likes of Patrick Vieira, Thierry, Paula, Lundberg, Perez, it's always going to be a big jump. But, my ability, got me there. And, I didn't look out of place for sure when I was there. But yeah, it was hard. Sometimes it was daunting because you're playing against such, big legends and figures, and you don't really want to mess up, I should say, or do anything bad. You try and always be on your best, especially behaviour with Padraig around. So yeah, it was great, and you're only going to learn and get better by playing and training with players like that.
So if you're not pulling your weight in training, Vieira would have been on to you. Is that how it tended to work then?
Oh yeah, if you're not pulling your weight, Big Pat will have a word with you. I think at the time when I was, in the squad, Tony Adams was the captain.
Right.
So you had a lot of big personalities that would, point fingers if you wasn't, training well or your attitude was off. So you had to, every day in training was like, a test. It wasn't, oh yeah, we're just going training today. It was, I've got to work, I've got to do hard. Not only to impress the boss, but to impress, the likes of Tony and Padraig and Martin Keown, because they've got Lee Dixon, they've got a big say in things, and, Arsenal did trust them as much as they trusted Arsenal.
Your debut's a bit nuts, where you score a hat-trick, that one. Not least because you're out till 6 a.m. drinking at an FHM party. I mean, geez.
Yeah, I didn't plan on playing. I had no idea I was going to start or even play. So.
What age were you then?
I think I was 20, 21.
Okay.
20, 21, yeah.
Okay, so you're out till 6, and then you find out, oh no, I'm starting. Nightmare.
Absolute nightmare, yeah. He pulled so I turned up at the hotel at 11:30. We have a bit of food, and then he does his team meeting, and then when he pulls the blackboard down, the paper, and the squad's already written out. See, I thought it said parlour at first on the right-hand side, but it said pennant. So I done a double take, and then when I realised it was my name, my heart just sank to my stomach. I was like, no, what have I done? And I was saying to myself, I've ruined my career. How am I going to play? I'm not going to play good. I'm still hungover. I feel like crap. And I just don't know. I thought to myself, look, just get through 15 minutes and then, just say your hamstring's gone and get yourself off. But it didn't turn out like that. In fact, it turned total opposite.
Ridiculous, really. So how good, bad, indifferent a professional were you during this period? Football is definitely changing, if not changed a lot since the 90s at that stage. Diets changed, alcohol's changed.
Yeah.
Tony Adams gone through his own kind of massive change very publicly and very bravely. Yeah. So what kind of a pro were you? Like, are we talking out most of the time, drinking a lot of the time, or what was the approach?
No, not at all. Not at all. If I had a game, I would, prepare as a professional should. Right. It was just this one incident.
Yeah.
I thought, there's a party, it was a good one. I didn't want to miss it, and I thought, I'm not going to play. I made a wrong judgment call. But usually, even in reserves or the youth team, it would be, at home on the Friday and preparing well for the game and, getting, the right food in, the carbs for the game. And but I wouldn't really go out during the week. And, if we had the Sunday off, and then when you're young, the boys would go out and, why not? As long as you've got a day off, there's no wrong in doing that. But I wouldn't say my profession was bad.
Right.
If I'd go out if we had days off, or if I know I wasn't playing and I went in the squad, then but I wouldn't do it when I know I had an important game or a game.
Okay, so would it be wrong of me to, from afar, I think that a lack of professionalism was the reason the breakthrough at Arsenal didn't happen? That isn't what happened in your view?
No, I don't think it was a lack of professional at all. I think it was, back then there wasn't many in the league, young English players getting a chance. It was kind of not unheard of young talent coming through. It was, a lot of foreign boys or established English players. Teams didn't really do that. And me being at the Invincibles, when you've got the likes of Parlour ahead of you, Lundberg, and you've got on the other side Perez and Overmars, it was always going to be difficult. If it was this era now where you see teams fielding a lot of young English players, like, for instance, Arsenal now, they've got a lot of young English talent, which are getting a chance. But I can tell you now, with this team, Arsenal talent, try to breaking in the Invincible era, it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened. So I won't say it was a lack of professionalism because, you know, I've had the conversation with Arsenal and they were saying you're doing well and keep going. But it's just English players wasn't getting that chance at that time, especially young ones. And the team that was in front of me was remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to remember. I mean, Rooney certainly got his chance. United gave young English talent their chance. But I do take your point about how good that Arsenal team was.
Yeah.
That's not easy to break into.
Yeah, obviously, you know, Everton got his chance. Rooney got a chance at Everton, but the contrasting teams then, Everton and Arsenal was huge. You know, maybe if I was at a lesser, you know, a lesser team maybe, but I got an earlier chance. And, you know, being there since 16 and then not getting my chance until I was 21 probably did take its toll on me. And, you know, I was getting a lot of frustration. I went out on loan multiple times, done well, came back and still didn't get my chance. So frustration did kick in. And then, maybe my attitude in training sometimes would be off because I was frustrated and I didn't know how to deal with it.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, well, 5 years, when you put it like that, it's a long time kicking your heels. Were you happy enough then to make a move away properly to try and get some game time?
I thoroughly enjoyed going on loan. First one was Watford, on 2 occasions, and the third was Leeds for the full year of the Premier League, and it was fantastic. And then to go back to Arsenal, and then to be in the back seat again, after having the taste of the Premier League, playing week in, week out, being a kind of a star player at Leeds United at the time as well. It was hard, and then, you know, that's when the attitude and the frustration started kicking and started sulking. Rather than being, you know, running out there and trying hard, I started to sulk because all I wanted to do was play. There's a lot of factors that probably hindered my time at Arsenal.
Yeah. So what's a Jermaine Pennant sulk then? Go out, long face on you, kick a few balls away, that kind of stuff?
No, it's funny, you know, just sulking, just not give it probably 100% in training because I know I'm not involved in the squad or I'm not going to be playing. So I'm thinking, you know, what's the point? Why am I bothering? Why am I here? That kind of, you know, attitude and childish. You know, I was young, and I just thought I'm not getting my chance. So I just thought I was going through the motions.
It seems Steve Bruce managed to get a tune out of you and seemed to connect with you, and you played some of your best stuff with him. I think you had 36 and then 38 Premier League appearances in 2 of the 3 years there, and it got you to move to Liverpool. So a place like Birmingham seemed to suit you.
Yeah, it did. Well, you know, Steve Bruce, I'll always take my hat off to him. I think is a fantastic guy and a great manager. And the thing about with Steve, he played me every week, no matter how I was, you know, any misdemeanors or any stories in the paper, or if I did anything wrong, he would put me on the team sheet because he knew I'd give him 110%, where it mattered on the pitch, where he needed me most. So he always believed in me, and I always thought, you know, I'm going to repay him on the pitch. You know, sometimes in training, sometimes you're not feeling great and you're not performing fantastic, and you know, some managers will look at that and not play you just because you didn't have a great training session or a couple of great training sessions. Sometimes, you know, things going on in your life where, you know, you're not on song, you're not 100%, but when it comes match day, you are. And I feel that's where it matters, and that's where Steve saw me where it matters. If I wasn't performing on the pitch, then maybe, you know, he wouldn't have picked me as much as he did, but I did perform for him, and I was one of his top performers, and, you know, I'm very grateful for that. And that's, I feel, with me, I think that's what got the best out of me, rather than kind of punishing me. He believed in me and put his arm around me when I thought, okay, I'll give you 110% on the pitch.
How often were the misdemeanors? How often was Steve Bruce having to go, oh, geez, Jermaine, look what's in the papers today?
No, not often. It was probably, you know, a handful of times over the years, but it wasn't, like I said, I was never a bad apple in the changing room. I was never bad around the ground. I was always a joker. I was always, you know, putting some eyes on people's faces. I was never, you know, one of them players where, oh, don't get him in your team because he would disrupt it. I've never been like that. It was just, you know, probably being spotted coming out of a nightclub at 3 a.m. where you're supposed to be a role model and a professional, you know, them kind of stories. But, you know, I was young. If we had a day off, like I said, I would go out. Obviously, it's changed now because there's a lot more spotlight. There's camera phones, there's social media, where it wasn't that as bad in my time as bad. So obviously, you know, now people have got to be very careful where back then, I was just obviously coming from where I came from. I just saw myself as another human being, but just played football. And obviously I made headlines more than others.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, it's amazing how much it has changed in terms of players coming out of nightclubs, and just even alcohol is a thing which is the players, most of them don't even seem to drink these days. It's amazing the change which has happened. So, like, if, for instance, I guess a point where it looked like your career could be in major trouble was the drink driving situation in February 04, and then January, when you were still serving the ban from 04, you got caught again, and it was jail time, and it was electronic tag on the pitch and those photos. What was going on in your life then that you were getting caught up in you know, such stupid situations, considering you had the winning lottery ticket to life, you know, to be risking it all? What was going on in your life then, Jermaine?
Again, that was the first two times was when I was at Arsenal, and it was on the last one after I before I got the time was I went on loan to Birmingham, and when I came out I got sold to Birmingham.
Right.
And it was a build-up again of a lot of frustration of not being able to play. People don't understand the effect that it has on players when, you know, you want to showcase your craft and you can't do it. You're not getting that opportunity, and after time it builds up, and you think sod it, and you make decisions that you wouldn't do if you was playing on a regular basis or you was involved. Hence, you get yourself into trouble, and emotionally and mentally, it's hard sometimes to deal with when you're not being able to play football. When that's all I've known, and that's all I wanted to do, and that's what I thought I was great at. So, you know, and not having, you know, the right people around you as well, you know, also plays a factor. I didn't have my family, so, you know, I didn't have really anyone to stop me from making these bad decisions when I was frustrated and lonely and upset. And obviously, like I said, you go out, you want to just, you know, people deal with things certain ways to get over things. I dealt with it by going out with friends and, you know, not thinking about it and having a good time. And obviously, remotely, that got me into trouble.
And is there anyone, maybe it's Bruce, maybe it's someone at Arsenal, I don't know, does anyone sit you down and say, here, listen, well, one, like, obviously, and I know you've said this in the past, so I'm, you know, this is a really dumb thing to do, like you're endangering other people. It's a really serious thing to do. People have lost loved ones because of drink driving. So there's that. Yeah. But also, like, dude, you're throwing this away. You've got to get a hold of yourself here. Does anyone try and have that chat with you?
No, not really.
I find that insane. Like, if it was today, like, honestly, you'd be put in therapy. Like, it'd be a real, the club would get around you, I think, in a massive way. Yeah,
I feel now there's more of that. There's definitely more of that now in mental health, because that's more, you know, that's came to the light of the game in males, and, you know, it's spoke about a lot more now. And I feel now clubs do have people and therapists who the players can speak to if things ain't going well. But back then it wasn't really heard of, wasn't really spoken of. Right. Once you leave the training ground and the game, you know, you basically you're on your own. So, like I said, the game's evolved in many different ways. Like I said, with fitness, with food, with therapists, with people at the ground, the way they look after the players now. But back then it was a little bit, you know, distant. So it was more to deal. You had to deal with it on your own.
I saw in your book you had the line MX7232. I don't think I'll ever forget it. Prison did change me. What is the experience of going into prison as a Premier League footballer? I mean, not easy, I would think. Terrifying, I would think. No. Yeah, it was terrifying because I had no idea what was awaiting me. You know, you watch your films and you have it's not good. You judge it on that. Yeah, it's not good. No, but it's a lack of, you know, you feel your freedom's gone when it has gone, and you just, you know, the little things that you used to take for granted, you know, come straight to the forefront of your mind. And, you know, you're sitting there telling yourself, what an idiot, what have you done? You know, you're in a great position, and, you know, why? You start asking questions, why? And then, you know, when I was there, I was writing letters to people, to friends, to family, to people who I've upset. And,
you know, you have a lot of time and a lot of thoughts run through your head. And it's a very lonely place. And, you know, I wish it upon no one to go through that. Yeah, so it's not a thing that I'd like to revisit.
No, I can imagine.
Put it that way.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what was in the letters apologising?
It was just, you know, 'cause I know, you know, my family and my grandma was upset, very upset with the news. And, you know, she's old. And so I wrote my grandma just, you know, apologising and tell her to stay strong and don't worry, everything will be fine, you know, just to reassurance. You know, my partner at the time, you know, she obviously going to have to go through hell with the press and her hearing that. So, you know, fans were writing in and I was writing back. Like I said, it was just you know, you get a lot of time to yourself. So you do, a lot of things come to the forefront in your mind, the things that you used to take for granted.
How were the fellow inmates with you?
They're fine. You know, I think I was in the press for a full week, every single day, front and back pages. So there was all coming up to me asking for autographs, you know, to sign the newspapers, which I thought was, you know, a bit weird. I thought, well, you know, that is what it is. And I guess that they're not used to, you know, my caliber of people going in there and seeing them. They're used to the proper criminals and whatnot. So I guess it was a shock to them as much as it was for me.
What effect do you think it had on you as a person, the whole experience?
Obviously, it definitely made me grow up and you know, appreciate things more, for sure. You know, like I said, being in there, you do think about a lot of things and even small things that we take for granted in life. It definitely made me think about that more and, you know, wanting to come out and, you know, cherish my career and try and do the best I could. And I did. I came out, done well at Birmingham and got my move to my dream club, which, you know, not many people say that they've lived one of their dreams.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a hell of an achievement because, bloody hell, you were odds against it around 2005 of that happening, you know, given everything you were going through. So, Birmingham, it goes well. You talked about the influence Steve Bruce had on you. Were you in any way tempted to turn down Liverpool because I had a good thing going here at Birmingham, or was it like as soon as the offer comes in, I'm gone?
No. Yeah, as soon as I heard about the offer, then, you know, it was my boyhood team. It's the team that I supported growing up as a kid.
Right.
And there was no chance I could turn that down. You know, I even turned down a move when I was at Arsenal to Everton because I wanted to play for Liverpool.
Right.
And my agent said, if you do play for Everton, you won't be able to play for Liverpool. So, you know, when that chance did come, I was thrilled and over the moon.
First season seemed to go really well. Played lots of games, Champions League final. How was Rafa Benitez?
It was totally different to Steve Bruce, put it that way.
A more distant manager,
really,
I think.
Yeah, he's a distant manager. He's not a manager you can go up to, really, and feel like you can knock on his door and have a heart-to-heart. He keeps himself to himself, and, you know, his attributes are more on the pitch, tactics, you know, stuff like that. But I wouldn't say he's the best manager I've had. And I feel maybe he could have possibly sat me down and, you know, spoke more what he wanted, you know, because there was time when I wasn't playing, I was getting frustrated, but he gave me no reason or no idea why. And I feel like I should have been playing. The reason why the second season I didn't really play too many games was because after the Champions League final, I had a stress fracture in my shin. And we had surgery and I was out for 3 months. And then kind of came back in January, which we rushed it a little bit, a game against Wigan. And then ever since then, it was kind of hard to get back in.
Right. It wouldn't strike me Benitez's football at Liverpool as the most exciting brand of football. How did a player like you find it? You don't feel it was the most exciting? Yeah, just more of a defensive slant to it than an all-out attacking slant. Like, obviously, there's great attacking players and they scored goals, obviously, but, like, I'm sure you were doing your fair share of tracking back.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel when I was playing for him at times, on his side especially, he was more controlling me, telling me where to run, where to go, where to pass, where, you know, I said a quote in the paper that sometimes it felt like I was a robot, because he was telling me, you know, what to do, how to do it, rather than let me express my skill and do what I do to and influence the game. And then obviously when I told the press that, they put us a story out, me, my face on Robocop's body. I said, yeah, which didn't go down too well.
No kidding. Sorry, I didn't realise you'd said that when you were still a player for Rafa.
Yeah, I said that, yeah, to Rafa, sorry. And,
well, that's game over.
Yeah. But no, I said, like, sometimes I just want to be expressive. I'm an attacking player.
Yeah.
I don't want to, you know, I get giving me instructions, but when I've got the ball, don't be telling me where to pass, how to pass it. You know, I see the game, and you know that's that. So it was a little bit frustrating. Like, some of the players, you say, I can't wait till second half when he's not on my side.
I can see for a player like you who might sense, well, I've got the beating of this player in front of me and I want to take him on because I can sense, you know, body shapes and the way it's laid out in front of me. This is the right thing to do. And yet if you're being told, well, I have to pass into that channel, that's not going to really sit well with a player like you. You know, it's not that one's wrong, one's right. Like Rafa was very successful.
Yeah,
but it's different styles for sure.
Yeah, and I get it. Look, sometimes he might see something that we can't, because we're focusing on the ball and the game and the man, and he's got a bigger picture because he don't have to worry about where the ball is going to get passed to. So I get he sees more of that. But not, you know, every single time I get the ball, I'm hearing Rafa shouting in my ear roll, and I just thought, just let me play sometimes. Just let me, you know, if I've got to beat another man, you don't worry about anything else apart from me getting past this guy, which, you know, most times it works, but, you know, just a sense of freedom. That's all it was. And, yeah, you know, it's Rafa for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like the theme across your career is, if you're not playing football, frustration kicks in very, very quickly and you start doing silly things and you just get unhappy, it gets on top of you. So...
that's 100%.
You never quite get past that. Like, you're still the same as the 19-year-old who's frustrated even in your late 20s. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's only to my later stages of my career where, you know, you just got to just deal with it. You got to man up, you got to suck it up. You just got to keep training hard and giving the manager no excuses not to pick you. Because the thing that I struggle with is that, why would you jeopardise a team? If you've got a player who can do better than the player you've got in there, just because he can run around and train a lot more, if you've got a player who can do better on the pitch, why would you jeopardise your team? So I kind of couldn't get my head around that, you know, especially when you're hearing the crowds, you know, shouting, get him on, and then you see forums that why isn't Pennant playing, is better than this, is better than that. And it kind of just, like I said, yeah, you ask yourself why? And, you know, you start taking it personal. And then that's when, you kind of start failing off the rails.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.